Hey! Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Friday Night Loin Stream. I am your host, Ian Kirkpatrick. How are you all today? Sorry for the lateness. I had an excursion on the way home. And that was, the street that I normally take home for a while. There was like half of the cops in my town were on that street in various positions. So I was taking the reroute, and then even on the reroute, there were more cops. And so I had to get rerouted again. And then I finally was turning into my neighborhood area-ish. And the train arm came down, and so I had to sit and wait for a train. So it was about 15 to 20 minutes later home than normal. Because that happens. Yes. I had a... Don't tell anyone, but I hid body of men in back of car. Being pulled over by cop would be bad thing. Do not want to explain smell. True. If it were a bad book, maybe I wouldn't be delayed. Look, so I practice the getting pulled, the having a body in the back of the car. Is that what you're talking about, Gabby? So this is what I'm thinking for Vlad. How does this make you feel? Also, you're gonna have to tell me, because I was thinking if it's even... I have to make sure that my stuff is going through too, because I feel like I turned off the voice mod. I did. I turned off voice mod, so you didn't even get to hear it.
Okay, this is what I was thinking for Vlad. Also, I should open other window just in case we need to make drinking games. Because even with good books, we can do drinking games. Boop. Okay. Well, now we should be able to hear me. But so I was thinking that for Vlad.
And this one may be for Cammy, other than my normal voice, or it could just be my normal voice. We'll see when we get there. But I was feeling like I could be extra sarcastic with this voice.
I know you would like it.
That's what I thought. I figured I could just use my regular voice, probably for Brian and Malcolm. Except not really for Malcolm, because I could do my fake deeper voice. Do you? Well, Gabby, if you don't have to hold on to your bad book suggestions, if you just drop it into... there should be a Google spreadsheet or a Google form that you can just submit it to. And then once we get usually about halfway through the book is when I go through that Google spreadsheet and I pick a couple of books and put those up for a vote. So if you just submit them when it's time for another one, I just grab stuff from that list. So that can go down for now. Okay. Since we don't have a recap, we can just go ahead and get started. And this starts with the prologue. I'm going to close. There we go. All of the opportunity over there on. May not have anything for Stefan. Oh no, I'm going to say. Hey, Thamagist. Thalmagist. I am always ready to make a fool of myself when I read, especially when I read French. That's how I hurt people's ears. Okay. Prologue. Oh my goodness. I know what happened. Is my dog when he go under table. He frees camera by touching cord. Oh my goodness, you're getting covered in things. Okay. Ja. Thamagist. Where do we go from here? In October 1451, just a few years before the fall of Constantinople and the following siege of Belgrade, see, look, I get to kill Usagi's ears right now by just mispronouncing everything. Bogdan II, a successor of Alexander the Good, was assassinated by one of the illustrious rulers' many sons. Not an unusual event in the Balkans during this time frame, which was marked by turmoil and political flux. Serving on a throne often conferred a very short reign, if not a life expectancy to match. This particular assassination turned two specific young men into political refugees. The older of the two was 21, and the other was 3 years his senior. Tatum, stop. 3 years his junior. The older one was accustomed to living on the road, having done his fair share of that since he was born, and also accustomed to exile. In fact, he had spent almost the entirety of his young life in exile or as a political prisoner. This more recent exile was just one more turn of the screw, given that he had fled to Bogdan II for protection after he had been ousted from his own throne not long before. They were still well within Moldova's borders, but out of sight of its capital, Suceava, with the Carpathians to the west, when they stopped to deliberate and consider their course before they lost too much light. Bears and wolves roamed the wilderness, and they were not prepared to camp in the chill of the night on a pile of stinging nettles with leaves rustling overhead. The older hid his mouth behind a fist to think, his brows low over his deep-set eyes, casting them entirely into shadow. Some of the menacing aspects of that scowl was practiced artifice, while the rest was natural to a young man who had lived a hard life, bereft of much joy and comfort. His younger companion, a dear cousin, came up alongside, studied the distance of his cousin glowered at, then scanned the horizon all about. Fall had turned the verdant landscape to gold and copper. The younger man fought not to be overcome by some emotion, gritting his teeth and wrestling to keep his breath steady. It was not the fear of death that had the younger so troubled. Both of them had participated in a military campaign against the invading Polish force and driven them back the year before. Hearing his companion's struggle, the older took a moment to regard him. Which one is this? Which one do I
need? The voice is the question. Catch your breath.
The younger answered with a little nod and did his best to obey. Seeing his cousin continued distress, the young man's hard look softened. His eyes wavered a bit, and as he struggled to find the right words.
We are not killed yet, and God willing, we shall live for many years longer. If so, we shall find a way to avenge your father.
Memory eternal, the younger murmured. See, I gotta make sure that sound's not on, otherwise I'm gonna keep dinging at you too. He crossed himself and turned his face the way that they had come. The last few rays of sunlight caught on his golden hair. The older one crossed himself also and resumed ruminating on their predicaments. His younger companion prayed voicelessly for a space of time. We haven't time to waste, I suppose, the younger said at last. By God's grace, we have come this far. Let us pray for his protection and guidance. Where can we go?
Stefan, let me think for a moment.
I suppose we could flee to Poland.
Poland? Why?
Stefan turned away to hide his flush. I could ask for backing to take back the throne, he said in a low voice.
You could become a vassal?
Vlit. Where else can we flee? The Sublime Porte? You still have the Sultan's backing for your throne. Stefan fell silent. Then he caught the cold fire of Vlad's eyes at the mention of the Ottomans and their Sultan.
I suppose that settles
suppose that settles it then, Stefan said. He crossed himself again. It is a long way north.
Don't go to Poland. You will have to make promises you ought not. They
Vlad's hate-filled eyes turned south.
always ask a great deal of you in exchange for support for your birthright. Too much. You should continue to distance yourself. Own your own land. Walk on it as a proud lord.
I can walk on nothing I own as it is, and neither can you, Stefan pointed out. And what good is it to talk of ownership and birthrights while we both stand on edge of woods with no prospects before us and enemies behind us?
I told you, let me think.
What is there to think about? Stefan demanded. Of course it's clear. We must flee north and seek support, or else south to Turks. We can follow the Sire well enough. Vlad's baleful eye remained fixed southward, as though he could see something even from the distance, which he reviled. He played with a ring on his fist absently.
West.
West, across the mountains? Stefan asked, perplexed.
We are going to Count Hunendora.
Vlad said with finality. He turned westward. You intend to flee to Transylvania? Stefan blurted, starting after his companion. You mean to tell me that you stood here wasting time thinking of some solution other than Sublime Port and you landed on John Hyanadi?
That's right.
Have you gone mad?
He is a strong military commander, a firm Christian, and knows the role of voivode. He also honors customs of hospitality.
Oh, he's a splendid commander, Stefan agreed. Save for the doomed companion, Stefan dared not mention the events of the Varna campaign, when the one-time voivode of Transylvania, now demoted to Count of Bystrica, Severin, and Timisoara. I told you, Usagi, I just gotta make your ears bleed. I try to just read the best that I can, not knowing how to pronounce things. He had fought alongside Vlad's father and older brother. It had ended in disaster. He had your father and Marcia killed. I thank you, Usagi. I'm just going to make a fool of myself if she knows language and I don't. Here we go. Vlad, he hates you. Mersha, that's a Mersha?
You think I don't know that?
Vlad snapped. He surely knows that you have Sultan's backing.
And we are going to Hunyadi.
Vlad turned and stared down at his shorter cousin. But why? Stefan demanded. Why take such risks? Why not have... he might have you killed. Tatum, I need you to calm down. I need you to calm down.
We aren't going to throw ourselves on the mercy of those who wish to be our overlords.
Vlad said in a tone of finality.
Are you going to be a lord in your own right, or owe your seat to some suzerain pleasure?
So that he can sweep you aside at the moment another claimant promises him more? Will you not set your own country on a better path than your grandfather did?
This set Stefan back on his heel.
When he had no retort, Vlad turned westward again.
Oh, think of your boy.
Think of your boy, Vlad, Stefan admonished. What sort of man will he grow up to be if his father walked straight into death's jaws rather than take the cautious, more certain roads?
Minea would grow to be a brave man over whom death held no sway, for he would know his father would prefer to face death head on than throw himself at the feet of some tyrannical degenerate.
Stefan considered this.
Even should we secure Hunyadi's help, can we free our lands from vassalage?
From vassalage? That is poor Stefan.
Oh, we can make the attempt.
Vlad replied. By the grace of God, Stefan said, it may be possible. Vlad grunted in answer.
By the grace of God, no one will find us. The Siray is the obvious route to look for us if our uncle believes that we are fleeing to the Sultan. No one would expect us to flee to Transylvania.
Stefan cast a glance over his shoulder, but Katasia Bistratcha was out of sight. Roads were treacherous at best, washed out at less than best. Lawless swaths of country lay between them and their destination. Savage wilderness alternating with nearly impassable mountains. Outlaws, bears, wolves, bandits lie before us, Stefan remarked.
I fear neither outlaw nor animal,
Vlad said.
And neither should you.
He turned back.
Be stalwart.
He considered his words, speaking deliberately.
If, by God's grace, Hunyadi should take us in, and I win back my throne, I swear to help you win yours.
Stefan's mouth dropped open. But Vlad had already turned to their course again. Well, Stefan said, should I, by God's grace, win back mine first, I swear to help you win yours. It was Vlad's turn to be struck speechless. He swirled back, seemingly as baffled by the promise as if his cousin had just spoken Chinese to him. His dark eyes widened, and then the uncertain waver returned. He turned away and gave a short nod of his head. He was accustomed to neither kindness nor generosity, and the unexpected oath cut through his armor to the quick. Look, I can stop killing the language now. Oh no. Oh no. Not that again. Okay, it's fixed now. I need to check the cord on the back of my computer to see if it's just loose. No hot people drooling over each other. Thank you for letting me know camera was lost. I should rearrange screen slightly so I can watch it if that happens without having to look at myself fully every time. No, go over there. Okay. I am blaming Tatum. Chapter 1, Eviction. Look, I should have fewer stumblings now. It usually takes me about a chapter to get into the actual pacing of a new book, though. Bye, John. Also, hello, John. I've never seen you around before, but hello, John. Heather came back to the apartment. Oh, my gosh. After a morning of bargain hunting, holding a mug with a dog's paw print on it.
Since we can't afford a dog,
she explained with a smile. Heather looked thinner these days, and it had Cammy worried, but she didn't want to push. Oh.
Thanks,
Cammy said, and took the mug. It was huge and heavy, and the print looked like a real dog's paw pressed into the ceramic. It was probably why the mug was so big. Cammy smiled at the ugly thing. Heather shrugged. Saw it at a thrift store. Couldn't pass it up. Her checked shirt hung so loosely off her shoulders that she had to roll up the sleeves to stick her fingers in her pockets.
What do we put in it?
Cammy wondered, crossing the dingy, ancient carpet to the tiny window above the kitchen sink. Droplets of rain dripped down the streaked panes, sparkling against the pale gray outside. We need some flowers, Heather said. Cammy nodded, set the mug in the tiny sill among the other mugs of flowers and seedlings. When she turned around, she saw how truly pale Heather looked, almost like paper. Oh, he just went under the thing. He may touch a cord again. The bones of her wrists stood out.
You okay? Cammy asked.
Yeah, Heather said. Heather's voice was enthusiastic, but her eyes shifted and she bit her lip. Cammy thought,
something must be wrong.
But she decided not to say so. She fingered the new mug and watched the points of lights as droplets rolled down the window.
It's too bad you're working tonight,
she told Heather.
I was looking forward to meeting the group. We're going to see a triple feature.
Aren't you working an afternoon shift yourself? Heather asked.
There'll be just enough time for me to leave work and catch the opening credits.
Just then, her phone began vibrating. Cammy checked the number. Her friends usually texted.
Oh no. Not now.
She sighed.
If I don't answer, she'll just keep calling. Better just get it over with.
Hey, monkey. Did you leave us? Are you all spoilers? Cammy is a loser. I can't believe she's answering this text message. Phone call. Cammy slid down into the coffee shop booth, fiddling with the most depressing matcha green tea latte ever made while her mother tapped one manicured nail on the table. Drizzle dripped down the window, the drops catching the lights inside the coffee shop and sparkling as they wiggled down the glass. The cluster of lights stuffed into empty glass bottles hanging from the ceiling above them cast dim light across the tables. It is voice mod. I think that's literally what it's called. Yeah, voice mod. Well, her mother demanded. The lighting cast deep shadows on her face. Cammy's phone buzzed.
Well, nothing,
said Cammy, snatching her phone and hiding it by crossing her arms. The foam art in her latte looked like a lumpy pillow floating on light green sheets. She hadn't been in this coffee shop before, but she would never agree to meet her parents at her place of work, so here she was. Her mother touched her father's arm. He cleared his throat. We're worried about you, he said, nodding his head to her mother while his eyes remained on his hands.
Okay,
said Cammy. She slid her eyes down to read the message screen on her phone.
Where are you? It's starting in a few.
Cammy stealthily tapped out of the screen.
Trapped by my parents. Don't expect me to be there anytime soon.
What are you doing? Her mother demanded.
My friends want to know where I am,
Cammy explained.
I was supposed to meet up with them.
Your friends? Her mother's mouth formed a shape like a smile while her eyes remained unchanged. You mean that druggie that you live with?
She went to rehab. She's fine now.
Honey. Her mother reached across the table. Cammy crossed her arms tighter. Her mother's mouth uncurled and her lips pressed together. The woman straightened her back and crossed her own arms over the table. We want what's best for you. You know that. You're too young to be on your own.
Mom, I'm going to be 21 soon.
But you're still working at that ridiculous coffee shop and you still don't have a major selected. Her mother's eyebrows arched higher than they could have ever be considered an expression of real organic emotion.
No, I'm still...
At a community college. Her mother's expression shifted into something like pity. Cammy glanced outside at the light rain turning streetlights into glowing halos in the dark. Her reflection was a shadow in the window, no features. She tried to sneak a peek at her phone in the window's reflection, but she couldn't read the screen in it. Instead, she saw her mother's reflection lean back in her seat. The woman hadn't actually drunk her own coffee, though her red lipstick lined the ceramic lips. Her father's cup was empty.
Yeah, well, it's what I can afford,
Cammy said. She sipped her lukewarm tea latte. Something like fine grit settled on her tongue. With a little Cheshire grin, Cammy's mother reached into her clutch purse and procured a bundle of $20 bills.
No.
Look, the fact that you can't afford a better place to live just goes to show that you don't know how to manage your money. You're so immature and you can't decide on a major. You're going into debt taking out student loans and you expect me to believe that you're responsible? her mother sneered, though she tried to hide it under something approximating sympathy. The fact that you're slumming with that loser,
Heather is not a loser,
Cammy said. Camilla, Constance, Lily. I'm not done talking, her mother said through her perfectly white teeth. Her hand balled into a thin fist with deep valleys between the tendons of her knuckle. Sit down,
Nice seeing you, Mom, like always.
Cammy told her.
Bye, Dad.
Her father nodded lethargically and did not look up from the table. Just a minute. Her mother's white teeth glinted behind the red lipstick. Sweetie, I'm not mad. I just want to make certain that you're safe. Your father and I both do. We're just worried, honey. That apartment isn't safe. Something might happen to you because of your loser friend. You can come back home. You won't have to worry about money.
So that you can tell me what to wear and how to talk to people and who I can hang out with again? Yeah, no thanks. And Heather is not a loser, and Brian and Melissa aren't far away.
That cop wannabe and his fat slob of a sister? Huh! The teeth were bared now, and the sneer was undisguised. Cammy snatched her bag and stormed past the booth to the glass door. Camilla, get back here. Her mother's voice stabbed at her from behind. You think you're impressing anyone with this temper tantrum? You're making a scene. Cammy slammed open the glass door, then grabbed at it to keep it from smashing against the wall. It might be a crappy little coffee shop, but why ruin some poor store owner's night just because her mother sucked? It's a pronounceable name. It is a pronounceable name, unlike every other name I've tried tonight. Cammy's mom do be like, you have friends? She stepped out into the light, rain and the dark. The air tasted clear. Her mother's thin hand hooked around her wrist. Look, honey, I'm not mad. I just have high expectations. You know that. You know that you can come back home if you need to, don't you?
Yes, Mom.
She hadn't meant for so much resignation to creep into her voice. It must be a habit. Her mother pulled her into a loveless hug and kissed her head. Ugh, you're all wet. Didn't you bring an umbrella? After all these years and you still can't plan the simplest thing.
Thanks, Mom.
Cammy pulled herself free. She heard her father's mumbling something behind her. She couldn't tell if he was talking to her or her mother. Take a cab. I'm not going to be sorry if you get yourself raped, her mother shouted. Cammy resolved to walk. The walk in the drizzle cooled her head. She checked the time, figured she'd missed enough of the first movie that there was no point in walking now. Besides, she was short on cash and she'd been considering skipping this movie marathon anyway. Textbooks kept getting more and more expensive. She texted her friends to let them know that she was heading home and received no response. They'd agreed no phones during the marathon, mostly because Lindsay was glued to hers otherwise, so it didn't bother Cammy. What did bother her was the sight of all her stuff being thrown haphazardly in front of the entrance of the apartment complex. No, not just her stuff. Heather's stuff, too. She stood for a moment flabbergasted, then stormed inside to Mr. Knox's office. She knocked, got no answer, so called the landlord up after hours, or not. What? Knox answered.
Hello, my name is Camellia. Camellia? Is it Camellia, not Camellia? Camellia Lily. I'm a resident of apartment 17. Do you know why my things are all thrown outside?
You didn't pay rent. You got evicted. That's simple. Cammy considered her words, wondering if she should temporize. No, be straightforward.
I did pay.
Well, I never got it.
You have to give tenants some sort of notice, right?
Cammy mock wondered. I did, for months. Not my fault if you don't check your mail. Cammy looked down at her stuff.
Mr. Knox, I have nowhere to go. I paid rent. I never got notice.
Not my problem. I never received cash and I delivered notices. Unless you pay the 6 months that you owe me, you're going to have to figure something out. The line went dead. Cammy squatted beside her haphazardly strewn things glistening in the street lights and keyed up Heather's number. No answer.
Heather, I swear, if you don't pick up.
Ring, ring, ring. Hi, it's Heather. If you know me, just text me. Cammy tapped to hang up as angrily as she could. It didn't help. She gazed up at the dark sky, blinking. The drizzle seemed to be letting up. Yay. Seeing everything she owned laying on the pavement made her chuckle to herself. It was practically nothing. Hairbrushes, some clothes, toiletries, little collectibles, a charger Heather had lost a few months ago, all of it lying right there on the sidewalk for everyone to see.
I'm so poor.
She giggled at her phone screen. Wait a minute. Camellia upsets everyone? Good luck, Gabby. Also have fun. Wait a minute. Her mother had known that something was wrong. Heather must have been keeping the rent money, hiding notices. Had to be. But her mother had known and not told her.
You're a monster,
she thought. She spent the next half hour helplessly trying to reach her friends No Dice just in case she dialed Brian again. Voicemail, and it had been voicemail the last, 15 times. She knew why her movie-going friends weren't texting back, but it was weird that the other two didn't. They must still be at work. Ping. It was Heather. We got evicted? Cammy glared at her phone.
Yeah, you took my money and didn't pay rent,
she texted. Heather read the message but made no reply while Cammy seethed. Finally, yeah, sorry about that.
I'm stuck on the streets and we have nowhere to live.
Cammy wished adding exclamation marks would be as satisfying as screaming, but they weren't. Again, Heather took her sweet time replying. That seemed strange. Heather's thumbs could fly over a touchscreen like hummingbirds on a rocket fuel. Sorry.
Thanks,
Cammy thought sarcastically, but she texted,
What do we do now? Where are you?
The answer came slowly in pieces.
I can't get to you.
I can't get to you. I can get to the coffee shop near the theater. Can you get there?
I don't have a car and no one's picking up.
Try Green for Life. They're cheap and local. I used them a couple of times. Cammy vaguely recalled Heather mentioning the rideshare, but didn't know much about it herself. New, local, eco-friendly or something? Probably better than the electric bikes or scooters. It'd be harder to carry her stuff if she had to use one of those.
Fine, I'll bring what I can.
Heather didn't even text a thanks. Cammy ran through all of the things that she wanted to scream when she met her roommate face to face. Well, it wasn't going to get any better sitting here. She checked what was left in her bank account. Yikes. She could get a ride to the coffee shop, then to Brian and Melissa's, but it would be a tight until payday next week, especially now that she had no fridge, stored rice, beans, and other goods that she needed between then and now. She installed the rideshare app, then stuffed what she could into her bags. One of the downstairs neighbors must have gone to the farmer's market or something because she found a sturdy cardboard box on the bushes in front of the building. It must have fallen from the window or been tossed deliberately and recently enough that it was only damp, not soaked. Cammy was able to fit most of her things in her bags and the box, along with some of Heather's stuff minus the kitschy $3 to $7 blind bag collectibles that they liked to accumulate. All of the flower pot mugs were shattered, their contents turned to mud on the pavement, except for the dog print mug. It had landed on a heap of clothing and it was only broken into 3 large pieces. She had just placed the pieces in the box when a clean-looking hybrid car pulled up in front of the building. She tapped on this window.
Hi. Are you with Green for Life?
She asked when the insanely pale-looking driver rolled down the window. Yes, you, Cammy?
Yeah, thanks. Is it okay if I put this all at the back there?
She asked, showing him the box. He nodded. You would not believe
the day that I've had,
she told him as she scooched the box across the seat and climbed in.
Wow, this is a pretty nice ride. I thought maybe since you guys were local and a little cheaper, you'd have, I don't know, older cars or something? I mean, it's practically a new car smell in here.
I got it detailed, the driver said. Cammy glanced up at the rundown little apartment complex as the car pulled away. The apartment sign had the worn sort of ugliness that she found charming, its letters faded and the rust leaving bloodstains down its face. Probably it should be condemned, she guessed. Whatever, rent was cheap, had been cheap, but even that had been too much for Heather, apparently. Well, that would teach her not to agree to pay with cash in envelopes handed over every month to be paid along with whatever Heather contributed.
I hope she's okay.
Cammy thought to herself.
Idiot.
If Heather hadn't paid rent in months despite her new job, it was probably because she was on something again, or some things. Had Heather really thought that if they didn't pay rent, that somehow no one would notice and they'd just get to keep on living there? That they wouldn't come home one day to find that technically legal establishment hadn't just dumped their stuff on the streets and told them that they were evicted? Heather must have been hiding the notices too, because Cammy had never seen them. Cammy fiddled through her photos while they drove. There wasn't any point bothering anyone now. She and Heather could wait on the Warrens' doorsteps until one of them came home from work.
What a perfect end to a perfectly awful day.
10 hours of putting up with customers' petty rudeness, and then her mother wanting to talk to her out of the blue. Maybe if Brian went to sleep early, she could sneak some booze from Melissa. Brian was a hopeless case, relentlessly uptight since graduating to real cop.
Wait a minute. Where are we?
She asked when she glanced out the window. They had pulled off Interstate 5, but it looked like they had passed Lake Bollinger, putting the coffee shop and the theater south of her. The driver had just made a left, and they were heading south again. She couldn't imagine that this could be the route to the coffee shop. Had the driver missed it and needed to turn around? She looked out the window. The nearest storefront was dark, and tarps covered the inside of the windows. Whatever it was closed. The one just behind it looked like it was under construction.
Hi, Usagi. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you have a good time with your fam. Oh no! The TV! Also, good luck with whatever you're doing, Barry. Caleb, right? Where is this? We're going to Crest Cafe on...
It's fine. This is a shortcut, said the driver. Cammy glanced back out at the shop that they had passed. She hadn't taken this street on the bus before. Some of the grass poking up through the cracks in the sidewalk was as long as her hair. She realized the reason it seemed so dark, there weren't any working streetlights. It looked like he was going to pull off pull off the road onto a weird dark parking lot.
Hey, I think your GPS is wrong. We're on the wrong side of the interstate, and you're too far north.
It's fine, the driver repeated. Cammy looked out the back window, about 100 feet or more to a streetlight, and there weren't any cars in sight, not even on the road that they had turned off of.
Seriously, I think that you have the wrong address or something here. I can pull it up the directions on my own phone. Hang on.
She saw his pale fingers take hold of a stylus to poke at the cell phone mounted next to the wheel. Suspicious, she pretended to enter the apartment address into her phone, but watched him type, "Got her. Be there soon."
Hey, seriously, turn around.
This time he only glanced at the mirror and kept going on. She tried the door and heard a lock clunk.
Oh no.
Of course, she'd get murdered for not taking a mainstream rideshare service on the one day that she couldn't reach anyone when she got evicted. Of course, on the night that her mother had screeched at her for not taking a taxi. Of course. She yanked on the handle of the door, then it wouldn't open.
Unlock right now,
she screamed. Wow, screaming already. It was embarrassing. Maybe it was because Brian's cop training had sunk into her brain when he told her about the horror stories and safety precautions. Well, Not the training stories, just the scary everyone is a murdering rapist parts. The driver had stopped talking to her altogether. She dialed 911. The driver grabbed her hands in his huge, freezing cold fingers. She screamed in pain. It was like the grip of a machine, relentless, overpowering. She pulled back as hard as she could, but couldn't break his terrifying grip.
Let me go! My best friend's a cop. I just left like a million messages on his phone. He's gonna come looking for me.
She screamed. Cammy kicked on the door and the window, only then noticing that there were people outside. A lot of them.
Oh no. Oh no, 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 no.
She bit the driver's hand. He tasted like rotten meat, and he didn't even have the decency to flinch. The lock tunked. The door opened, and someone grabbed Cammy by the ankle.
No!
She shrieked as she was dragged from the vehicle. The driver ripped her phone from her hands, watching as she clawed helplessly at the door, the carpeting, the wheel well, but couldn't hold on.
No, stop!
More people grabbed her legs, her wrists, and they lifted her up like she was an inflatable pool toy. They didn't say anything to each other, but she spotted one looking into the vehicle at her things as they carried her away. She was going to die. These people were going to kill her, or sell her to the black market, or harvest her organs, or all of those things. They were crazy cultists or something.
Is this why I can't reach Heather?
Cammy suddenly went cold. Heather had told her about the writing service. She must have used it at least a few times. Was Cammy about to disappear into a serial killer's basement and see Heather's head on a dissection table?
Help! Help! Somebody help!
She screamed. The hands holding her up stopped carrying her toward the nearest building. She heard something like thick fabric whipping around, then a thud. She heard the same set of sounds again, and the hands were released. And that all hands released her except for one pair whose owner wrapped an arm around her chest and pulled out a gun with his spare hand. She cranked her head around. The gray-faced guy who held her was wearing a green hoodie, and she noticed the others wore just whatever. Like everyday people. There was even a woman in a miniskirt and heels. The only thing they had in common was their weird skin color, and they were all kind of looking sick and disheveled. Then she saw two of them on the ground, beheaded. Her eyes just about fell right out of her head and onto her open mouth when she saw that. What had happened? The maybe cultists waved their guns and knives at the darkness like a bunch of helpless bimbo stereotypes from a slasher movie. One of them, a middle-aged guy, fired his gun at a pillar. The noise made Cammy flinch in surprise, and it stabbed her ears. The sound seemed to be echoing in space. Then a man in black came out of nowhere and put a sword through one of the maybe cultists, a hipster-looking chick wearing a handmade knit cap with a penguin on it. The hipster girl's eyes widened. Before she could even look down at the weird curved blade sticking out of her chest, the man in black ripped it out of her and used it to chop her head clean off. Other would-be murderers fired at him, but the man in black seemed to duck and weave well enough to avoid getting shot by these obvious amateurs. He rushed another one of them and performed the same stab and slash, killing a Hispanic man in his 50s. Then he went to the next nearest, and one after that. Some of the pale-faced people were fumbling to reload. The hoodie guy fired his gun, and Cammy did her best to plug her ears. She had never heard anything so loud before in her life. Movies did no justice at all. The hoodie kept firing while she flinched and found that she couldn't look away from the man in black with his sword. She finally realized why it looked so weird and thick and only half shiny. It was made of wood. Well, one side was wood. The other side looked like steel.
What the heck?
Suddenly, there weren't any more amateur, cultish, serial killer, whatever they were, except the hoodie, and the man in black faced him head on. "Come on closer and kill her," Hoodie warned, pressing his gun to Cammy's temple, then aiming it at the man in black. Then at the man and black. Back and forth several times. The man in black did not approach.
I gotta do something.
Cammy thought to herself. That's what Brian was always saying. You had to survive, somehow or another. If she let Hoodie keep using her as a hostage, he might take her somewhere no one would ever find her. She swung her fist at his crotch, hitting it as hard as she could. He didn't flinch, but she heard a gunshot and felt Hoodie jolt backwards just a little. The man in black had a gun in his other hand. You complete noob, Hoodie said. That can't kill me. The man in black had crossed the distance and sliced Hoodie's gun hand off. Cammy ducked, felt wind in her hair, and then the Hoodie's arm simply fell away. His head bounced a little on the old asphalt as his body collapsed beside it. She screamed and jumped away from his corpse. There were 20 people or more lying all over the ground, decapitated. Somehow, the man in black had killed all of them without getting shot or stabbed, and done it with a weird-looking half-wooden sword. She watched him stab Hoodie's headless corpse in the chest with it. She felt lightheaded. Her ears were ringing. She realized she was about to faint. Cammy dropped to a crouch and put her head between her knees. Melissa had told her to do that if she was ever going to faint. She needed air or something. Had she remembered to breathe? There's a Tony. Oh, hey, Tony. Yes, a Dracula book. She squeezed her eyes shut, forced herself to take slow, deep breaths. In, out. In, out. Her fingers were trembling. Everything in her chest was trembling. Finally, she forced herself to look up. The man in black was talking into, of all things, a flip phone. Her ears were still ringing, and it took her a few moments to understand what he was saying. 22, to be exact. There were 2 inside the building. No, I'll need new one. This is getting uselessly dull. I know you'll have to get it blessed. No witnesses.
He paused in conversation.
He paused in conversation and stared straight at Cammy, and she gasped in spite of herself.
Victims,
he said into the phone, studying her.
I didn't see any. Yes, I am checking.
He held a finger up to his lips. Cammy nodded, her eyebrows together in confusion.
What?
She fell silent when he frowned and tapped his finger to his lips aggressively. The man in black stepped over 3 headless corpses, coming right for her.
Crap,
she thought. He seemed to have sheathed his weird sword. She saw its handle poking out from his long black coat. She didn't see the gun that he used, but maybe he'd gotten it from one of the pale people. Before she could think of whether she should try to run or not, he was right in front of her. He gently touched her chin and lifted her head a bit to take a look at her neck on both sides. Satisfied, he smiled and winked conspiratorially at her, then took one of her hands and placed an incredibly wet kiss on her knuckles, lingering just a touch too long.
No, I didn't find any.
The man in black said into his phone.
No. Just a car. Yes. Devil take you, you cretin.
He flipped the phone shut and fixed the lapels on his coat with a grunt of disgust. He muttered something to himself that didn't sound like English and walked away into the night.
Hey! Hey, mister! Hey, wait!
The man in black ignored her, so she slapped her legs to get herself moving. She charged after him. When she had come nearly within arm's reach, he stopped dead and swung around to face her with a suspicious glower and one hand on the handle of his weapon.
Whoa, no, whoa. I wanted to thank you.
He remained immobile, eyeing her suspiciously.
I mean it. I mean, I don't know who you are or where you came from or what all that was about.
You'll want to get your things and be on your way. Sooner rather than later. Go home.
No, there wasn't any point in explaining anything, was there?
Well, I was on my way to a coffee shop and I just got evicted because my roommate didn't pay. Anyway, you don't need to hear all of that. I just wanted to say thanks.
She held out a hand, which he studied like it was a crossword puzzle written in ancient Greek.
For real, you need a favor? I mean, I don't have a lot of cash or whatever, but if you want, like, infinite free coffees or something, I'm a barista and...
He blinked at her with what she thought must have been frustration.
Sorry, I'm rambling, but really, thank you.
If you like.
He said. Hesitantly, he took her hand. It was then that she noticed he wore gloves.
Oh, wait. I gotta call the cops. Crap. What do I tell them?
I wouldn't. This will be taken care of. Just go home.
My phone. So are you some kind of investigator or something?
She trotted back toward the pristine eco-car. The driver's head was in the lap, and she spun in a circle to settle her rising gorge and catch her breath. Once it was caught, she turned back and kept her eyes on anything else until she spotted her phone on the floor in the back.
Hey, if you're an investigator, this guy was texting someone earlier. He might have contacts or something.
She rubbed her phone with her thumb. No cracks. Thank goodness. She almost jumped into the car roof when she noticed the man in black was standing next to her. He moved as silently as a shadow. She watched him peer into the vehicle and spotted the driver's phone. Then, despite her trying to, she saw that the driver's severed head had fangs.
No way. No flippin' way.
But the wooden sword made more sense now. Not calling the cops made even more sense. The group of pale-faced creeps living in the abandoned buildings made way too much sense, and the man in black had checked her neck when he was looking for victims.
Am I crazy? But are these... these guys aren't.
Just go home.
The man in black repeated. He straightened up, looked at her. She saw in his eyes that she was right. He didn't even try to lie to her.
That's impossible.
She told him, and herself.
Impossible.
She stepped away from the car and watched the man in black walk around to the driver's side. He reached in, slapped the severed head to the floor, then took the phone from the mount. He tapped at the screen of the cell phone that he had stolen with increasing frustration before he pocketed it.
Oh, crap. Is it broken?
She asked, jogging around the car to take a look. The man in black eyed her, then pulled out the phone and showed it to her. She didn't see any cracks in the screen.
That's weird. It looks fine.
The man in black pulled it out of her reach, and then she tried to check it herself.
Right. Fingerprints,
she said, before realizing that made no sense. This was a man who had just killed 20 people. People who were apparently vampires. That made him some sort of vampire slayer, and that meant that this was something else entirely. He'd said there'd be no police. Some sort of secret group was going around killing vampires, and he was one of them. It was like a movie.
You saved my life,
she told the man in black again. He did not look at her, but she could see that he watched her out of the corner of his eye.
And I know what you really are.
No, you don't,
he told her. She extended a hand to him again, reaching.
I want to know.
No, you don't.
She held onto his hand, but his eyes were hard, dark, unmoved. She sniffed and patted his elbow and his shoulders before she let go of his hand once more. The man in black studied her like she was a million-piece puzzle, and a few pieces were missing. Then he touched his forehead with his finger in salute and pointed over Camu's shoulder. She turned, saw nothing, and when she turned back, he was gone.
Wow.
Will Smith is a vampire. Welcome, Sarah. Welcome back. I should say welcome back, Sarah. Cammy retrieved her bag and dragged the box out of the car. Her hands were still shaky and her legs felt like rubber, so she walked loosey-goosey back to the main street and followed it to the gas station. Once there, she pulled out her tablet, reserved an electric bike, and then checked her tablet. In a moment of truly crazy inspiration, she had slipped her phone into the man in black's pocket when she shook his hand one last time. She could see its location. This
is some crazy Harry Potter underworld superhero hidden world call to adventure stuff,
she thought to herself, and there was no way that she was going to let it go. No way. She found the electric bike that she reserved, discovered that she could wedge the box with her and Heather's things between the handlebars with the tablet sitting securely on top of the pile, and she set off. She couldn't take much more of this. Her phone was still moving, and she had crossed over Lake Washington on Interstate 90 40 minutes ago, and now the city was starting to thin out. Heck, all that she could see on either side of her were trees, with the occasional houses sprinkled like breadcrumbs along the way. She glanced back and could only see the city's glow against the clouds above. Nothing but trees from here on. She rode into a thicker woods, taking a strangely well-kept dirt road. Her phone had stopped moving. She came to a pile of stones with the numbers inscribed in Roman numerals. There was a narrow dirt road leading through the trees. Cammy checked her tablet. It said that her phone had to be here, and this had to be the address. She peered at the walls of the trees and the thick blackberry bushes that would stop her trying to go hiking off trail. No buildings. The bike was low on power and probably wasn't supposed to be all the way out here anyway. She sighed and left the bike on the dirt road, taking her box in her arms. She walked up the dirt road and spotted 2 stone gargoyles standing on either side of a wooden archway. Pretty par for the course for a gothic adventure. Her tablet was hard to use as a flashlight with the box in her arms. She took a deep breath and headed up the path. The trees grew over the road, blocking out what little moonlight there was through the thin clouds, and her arms arched from the way that she was carrying the box and her tablet. The wind kept rustling the trees, and she felt certain that there were eyes on her.
No, you're still jumpy because of what happened. There's no way that there's anything out there. Just go.
She didn't want to turn around and stare at the blackness behind her. She was certain that she'd see eyes glowing at her in the dark. The path went slowly to the right as it climbed the hill. Cammy panted from exertion. Her shoulders ached. Her mouth was dry. Was there a house somewhere at the end of this? A secret magical academy or a dojo or a training ground for vampire hunters? She certainly hoped so. But she had been walking for what felt like forever, and there was still this stupid, dark road. Then she saw the pale glow of moonlight ahead. Rejuvenated by the sight, she speed-walked towards it. The trees fell away, revealing neatly trimmed grass, a huge gravel driveway, and an actual freaking mansion standing huge and dark and gothic in the moonlight. Will Smith in the movies.
I knew it,
she exulted. She wanted to pass out where she stood, but she forced her legs and her screaming arms and her weary body to propel her towards the mansion. She couldn't see it very well in the faint moonlight, but it looked like just the kind of place a vampire hunter would call home. 4 stories tall, gabled roof, and the ancient walls covered with ivy and creepers, a thick snake of smoke twirling out of one of the chimneys. The windows were all dark except for one on the ground floor, and only a soft flickering glow emanated from it. Nothing electric looking. She came to a stout wooden door and looked for a doorbell. She didn't see one, even after she shone the light from her tablet at the jamb. Finally, she shifted the box in one hand and knocked as loudly as she could. Her knuckles gave a pathetic dink, dink, dink. She felt certain was too quiet for anyone to hear unless they stood on the other side of the door. The wood must be inches thick. Should she kick it? No, that would be rude. But how could she make more noise? Toss some small gravel pebbles at the windows until she got someone's attention? It occurred to her that she was actually trespassing. Sure, she was knocking on the door and all, but if there was a super secret vampire hunter inside, he might not be so happy about strangers showing up on his door uninvited. Worse than that, it hadn't even occurred to her to wonder whether he was friendly. He might be a creep or violent or something. The door swung open as she stood biting her lip, realizing this might be the stupidest idea that she ever had. Get random insurance calls? That would be kind of hilarious. The man in black stood at the door, frowning at her absolute uncomprehending disbelief.
Hi!
She greeted. Nothing for it now but to press forward.
Look, I'm sorry to bug you, but, well, she had no idea
What to say.
You're a vampire, and I think that's the coolest thing, and I want to be invited into your crazy world.
Yeah, she couldn't just say that. Could she?
I'm Cammy. You have my phone.
She said to the man, scanning the path behind her, even leaning his head out far enough to glance to the left and to the right.
So, if I could have it back...
She was saying, when he grabbed her by the throat and hauled her inside. She found herself sliding across the floor to a wall and heard the sound of the door slamming shut behind her. The box fell to the floor, her clothes and hairbrush and collectibles scattering all around her. She scrambled to her feet, climbing the wall with her hands. She turned to see the man in black coming for her. Cammy dashed away, following the wall. So he was a psycho. Why hadn't she thought of that? Why hadn't she figured out that maybe there weren't vampires and it was all just some sort of weird mob turf war or something? The man in black cut her off. He glared at her so hard that she thought his pupils glowed red. Wait, were they actually glowing red? That couldn't be right.
Who do you work for?
The man in black demanded.
Quick, or I'm going to get creative when I kill you.
What? No, I don't work for anyone. I'm a barista.
This was such a bad idea. Her eyes darted to the door. Maybe 14 feet to her left. Could she reach it in time? The man in black seized her shirt and shoved her against the wall.
I'm not accustomed to asking twice. Who do you work for? Who sent you?
No one. I swear I'm a barista. I work for this little coffee shop near campus, the Mindful Bean. I swear, please. I know that it was stupid. I'm sorry for bothering you. I thought maybe that I could escape my stupid life and do something. I don't know. Please, please. She couldn't
breathe. She tried to pry her hands from her shirt. But his grip was like the driver's from before. Iron. She couldn't speak coherently, couldn't think.
Oh God, please, don't let me die. Please, God, I'm so stupid.
How did you find me?
The man in black demanded.
I put my phone in your pocket. I just followed it with my tablet.
What do you mean you followed it? You followed your phone.
He looked down at her things scattered across the floor.
I don't see anything that you could use. How'd you do it?
Dude, with the app? That's the whole point, so that if you lose your phone, you can find it.
App? What is that?
What?
He didn't look that old. He had a cell phone. He had to know what she was talking about, sure. It was a clunky old flip phone from 1,000,000 years ago, but he had to know what it was. He lived in a mansion, not under a rock. She flinched when he reached into his jacket and drew forth not a gun, but his flip phone. He glowered at her between pressing digits before he put the phone to his ear. She could just hear the tiny sound of the rings on the other end. Why are you calling me? She heard a voice say on the other line. Cammy thought that she heard music, too. Some kind of synth pop. Her ears were still ringing a little, so she wasn't sure.
Shut up,
said the man in black.
Is it possible to follow phone when it is lost with technology of some sort?
Wow, he seriously didn't know? How is that possible? Cammy heard what she thought was laughter on the other end. Yeah, old man, you've been able to do that for a while. Not with your old clunker, but the new ones. Why?
Never mind.
The man in black flipped the phone shut. He studied her up and down, then kicked her things on the floor. The pepper spray Brian had bought her came rolling out of her bag. He kicked at the bag again until her wallet came out. The man in black shoved her down on the ground with the same strength that she had only experienced earlier this night and stooped to pick up her bag. He turned it upside down, dumping out her makeup and toiletries. Cammy felt her face start to blush when her box of tampons fell onto the floor. He peered into it, reached inside, felt around, turned it inside out, dropped it, then squatted to look over her things.
I'm really sorry. I promise that I won't tell anyone. I promise. Please, just let me go.
Quiet.
He snatched up the wallet and flipped it open.
Who are you?
My name is Cammy Lily.
He was looking at her ID. He ought to know.
Full name?
Camellia Constance Lily. I know, it's stupid. I got 2 grandmothers' names, okay?
The man in black scrutinized the ID, flipping it over a few times, looking at both sides. Once done, he dropped it.
And you tracked me with your phone?
Ooh, pizza. Pizza. Enjoy your pizza. She nodded. He patted at his pockets and found her phone. It had a custom cover that she had ordered from an online site from a girl who did that kind of thing, and it was covered in cutesy giraffes and other animals, bubbles and flowers with smiley faces and googly eyes. The man in black studied it. Cammy glanced at the pepper spray. She kept her face down so that she could see her eyes. Couldn't see her eyes. She could grab the spray, get him in the face, and go out the door before he had a chance to do anything. She hoped that she could. She had to do it.
Why would you do this? Why follow me?
I thought... It's so stupid. I thought that it was like, in the movies where the weird stuff happens and then the hero or heroines find out that there's all of this, magic stuff and they go on a journey and do all of this cool stuff. I know. I'm so stupid.
It didn't occur to you that I might be unfriendly?
The man in black crossed his hands over each other, one gripping the other that held her phone. Now was her chance. She pushed herself forward, grabbed the pepper spray, pointed it at his face, and let him have it. He blinked once, apparently in surprise, but after a few moments of uninterrupted spraying, he didn't so much as wince. Cammy let up, her heart going like a dubstep rave. What had happened? Why hadn't it worked? She had no way to get out. She backed to the wall, felt her legs give out, and slumped to the floor. The man in black reached into his jacket and pulled out a white handkerchief. He wiped his face.
I offer my sincerest apologies. It seems you really don't have any idea who I am or what you are doing, Miss Lily.
Cammy.
She corrected tonelessly. She didn't know why she should bother, but she liked the nickname better.
Cammy.
The man in black repeated.
Again, sincerest apologies. Are you badly hurt?
Wait, what? I don't understand. What happened? Who are you? What's going on?
She looked at the door again.
I wouldn't try that just yet. Though, I would like to know how you managed to get up here in first place. But first, come, you should sit down.
He gestured behind him to an antique divan.
Are you alright?
You threw me into a wall.
Don't exaggerate. Had I done so, you would be dead.
He could switch between gentle and condescending and back with surprising agility.
What do you mean, exaggerate? You threw me into a wall. You were going to kill me.
Don't insult me. If I had wanted to kill you, you would be dead, and you wouldn't be having this conversation. I am very good at killing people. Please, you should take seats.
The man in black gestured to the divan again. Cammy stayed where she was, but she looked around. They were in a huge room with stairs against one wall and beautiful paintings on the other, mostly landscapes, but also some portraits. The floors were marble. There was a stone fireplace in front of which there were antique divans and chairs with sweeping, curling legs and crest rails. Despite how old they must be, they were in pristine condition.
I shall get you some tea in a moment, but please, you should sit. Can you walk?
Dully, Cammy allowed him to lead her to the divan. The seat was hard and unyielding despite its beautiful appearance.
What's going on?
She asked, when the man in black stood before the fireplace studying her movements clinically.
Who are you? Oh, good.
Usagi doesn't have to be around for me to say this guy's name in the worst possible pronunciation probably ever on this channel.
Please forgive me for not introducing myself. I had assumed you knew who I was when you arrived. I do not get visitors or intruders of any kind who do not already know me.
So, who are you?
I am Vladislav Dracula, one-time voivode of Wallachia and Duke of Alalos and Fagaras.
He offered a beautiful, well-practiced bow.
At your service.
Always, always listen to the guy that can take the pepper spray head on. Like they're in a box, like I'm in the box room and they talk back and forth through intercoms. Is that
in a way that is not disturbing of the flow of the read? Chapter 2. How are we doing so far, folks? Now I am going to take this out because my bangs keep falling in the face. Morbius jokes. Morbius jokes are still funny. Gabriella Rose is a beautiful name. Also, my sister has middle name Rose. I like to pretend when, yes, that, you know, that helped me. He goes, I live in America for so long, talking to federal agents. I cannot say own name.
Who? You're who?
Cammy demanded. She saw him purse his lips.
Dracula.
He had said it like Dracula, with the la almost sounding like la before he adopted the more familiar pronunciation now. It seemed to leave a bad taste in his mouth from his expression.
Dracula. Oh, Dracula.
Yes.
Dracula.
She squinted at him. Now there was enough light to get a better look at him. He didn't look like Bela Lugosi. She dimly remembered seeing a painting once that someone had told her was the historic Dracula. He didn't look a whole lot like that either. This guy was broad-shouldered with thick hands, heavy eyebrows set over deep-set eyes that weren't black. They were darker green. The fireplace glowed in his hair, turning some strands gold. He looked north of 40, but she couldn't gauge by how much. He had one of those faces. She guessed that he had some sort of vague Eastern European something in his features, like how his nose and cheeks looked. Not very tall, not very short, not handsome, not unattractive, just worn-looking.
Are you serious?
Very.
Come on. Come on. You expect me to believe that you're Dracula? I want to suck your blood? Are you kidding me?
I am not.
But... So were those guys not vampires?
Oh, they were vampires, all right. A poor shoddy sort, but vampires they were.
But you killed them.
Yes.
Why?
because they've been killing people and it makes my employers quite upset.
Employers?
Perhaps we'll talk about them later. First, tea.
But nothing. He was already leaving the room. Cammy wanted to get up and follow him, but she sat like a lump instead. She felt dizzy, woozy, weak, wasted, spent. She leaned back against the stiff back of the divan. It felt more like wood than cushion to her annoyance.
Tea will be ready in few minutes,
the man in black said when he returned. She couldn't accept that he was Dracula. That Dracula. It was impossible. And way too weird.
Aren't you like king of the vampires if you're really Dracula?
She latched onto the thought as if it sprang to her head. She could poke holes in this ridiculous claim.
I beg your pardon,
he said in a tone that wasn't a question, just a sneer of irritation.
Well, aren't you? Wish you were. Dracula glow in dark. Oh.
No, and I'm not a count either.
You're not?
No.
I thought you were.
Only because a certain Irishman got it into head to write a book about the vampire count, and happened to find my family name and use it despite my expressly telling him not to.
Wait, you told him not to? You met the guy?
Yes, in a rather roundabout way. Through his brother, Thornley, actually, at one of Lady Wild's soirees.
A lady? Wait, who's that? Who's what? The book is about you? You're real? All that happened?
The man in black grimaced in absolute disgust.
That book. That damnable book. No, it is a work of fiction. Mr. Stoker wrote a ridiculous piece of gothic melodrama about the vampires because they were all the rage. As I said, he simply found my name and appropriated it for his own purposes. No piece of it is based on fact.
But if you met him, you were in England, so you were all Victorian and running around London?
I spent very little time in London. It was an appalling city, and I only went there because of Mr. Wilde confessed, but never mind. Yes, I am Dracula. I was Dracula before the book. I will be, and I hope after that damned book is forgotten by world. At least I pray that one day it goes out of print and ceases to plague me everywhere I go.
Pray? Wait. I thought you couldn't go near crosses. This doesn't make any sense.
No, what doesn't make sense is why a young woman like yourself... Oh, no. What doesn't make sense is why a young woman like yourself would go so far as out of her way to follow a complete stranger who could be a maniac to mention. I told you to go home. I can't. I got evicted. My roommate stopped paying rent. She gasped in realization.
I gotta text Heather.
Dracula. She supposed she could call him that, arched his eyebrow.
Hang on. I need my phone.
She leapt to her feet. He mimicked the motion and threw out a hand to stop her. Before she knew it, what was happening, Dracula had hold of her arm. She thought that he was going to try to stop her before she realized that she had almost fallen right on her face.
Please, take care. Please, sit until you've recovered.
He then held out her phone. She snatched it and slumped back into the divan to text her roommate.
Heather, you okay? I know I'm late. Can't talk right now. Where are you?
She held the phone in her hands, staring it down at the screen. The sound of a tea kettle whistling drew Dracula's attention.
One moment,
he said. He went to an adjacent room and returned several minutes later with a beautiful tea set on a silver or pewter tray. The cups looked like real china, beautiful in white and blue with gold around the rims and with the handles. He poured her a cup of aromatic tea, red-brown.
Cream or sugar?
Wow. You went all out.
I don't see why I shouldn't.
She nodded at the sugar bowl, and he put 2 lumps in her cup. The tea smelled absolutely marvelous. She noticed tea leaves swirling around at the bottom of her cup. That was a first for her. To her surprise, he poured a cup for himself.
Wait. You can...
He was already sipping the tea. Apparently he could.
What are you? Some sort of vegetarian vampire?
I beg your pardon.
He asked, sounding confused.
You know, all reformed and avoiding human blood and all?
I drink human blood.
What?
Who are you trying to contact?
He asked, as though they had been discussing the weather or the latest show that they had gotten bored of.
You drink human blood?
He set his cup down in its saucer and glared at her.
Couldn't you, I don't know, drink animal blood instead?
Are we talking about mommies now? This could get weird fast. Stress eating. Is it... pickles are freaking amazing. I love pickles.
This chat is weird, you guys. Indeed, I could, but it is not same. If I hunted animals, I would need great many of them, and I would not have to kill them. If I could easily survive on animal blood, that would have made my experiences enormously less difficult.
He took another sip.
But I would have had to take an occupation as butcher, like a peasant. No.
She stared at him.
Now, tell me about Heather.
Heather is my roommate. I was supposed to meet her at the coffee shop. I am wondering. Is it beeping for you guys? Is that why it sounds like a walkie-talkie? Is it beeping at you guys? Heather is my roommate. I was supposed to meet her at a coffee shop since we got evicted.
I recall you telling me that you had your residence, that you had lost your residence. What happened? Okay, cool. I'm sitting here looking at my sound bar on my computer and I'm seeing it move when I click and I'm like, what is... Okay, cool. Thank you. Was just checking that.
Cammy snorted and rubbed her thumbs over her phone screen.
Heather stopped paying rent, apparently. I don't know. Anyway, I guess that we were behind. I came home today and boom, no more home.
But you were going to meet her.
Yeah, that's why I was using Green for Life. She used them a few times. Hey, do you think that vampires are using that rideshare service as a way to get a hold of people to eat? That couldn't work, could it? They'd get caught?
I know nothing of that service, but I suppose that they might be. These last few days I have encountered a surprising number of vampires. Even so, 20 of them in... Oh my goodness. Please, just let me click page. Please, stop. Even so, 20 of them in the open is enormously strange. I haven't seen numbers like that out of wartime.
You mean the group that tried to eat me?
Cammy asked, and he nodded. Cammy looked down at her phone. No reply. Angry, she called Heather. Hi, it's Heather. If you know me, just text me. Are
you kidding? Heather, I am not playing around. Call me back ASAP.
Something amiss.
Yeah, Heather's acting weird. She hasn't texted earlier than she was. She wasn't texting earlier than she was, and then she told me to meet her, and now she's not answering.
A horrible thought occurred.
You don't think that they got to her, do you?
She seemed strange when she texted you.
Yeah, it seemed, I don't know, rude, I guess? It wasn't really like her.
Cammy felt her heart in her throat. Dracula poured himself another cup of tea.
It seemed likely that they did, and that she was trying to lure you into their trap.
He sipped the tea. She stared at him. Not a whisper of compassion on his face. He might as well have said that he saw her going... So that he saw it going on. He might as well have said that he saw it was going to rain. There we go.
Heather's fine. She's probably just high or something.
I suppose that's also possible.
Same expression. Same nothing emotion. Cammy swirled the tea in her cup angrily.
She's got, a substance abuse problem, as they like to call it. She's been drinking a beer and smoking weed ever since high school, and her parents were always on her about that. Sophomore year, she started going on to other stuff, cocaine and on and off, and she's been to rehab, and we're still trying to support her, but anyway, I think that she must have picked it up again, because apparently she hasn't been paying rent for months.
I see. So, she might be seeking drugs somewhere.
I mean, maybe, yeah? I hope so. Wow. I just said that I hope she's looking for drugs.
Do you have picture? I have hunted down several groups of these maggots and some of their victims. I hope I have not seen her face among them, but if so, I may be able to recognize. If not, should I uncover more, I shall look for her.
Thanks.
Cammy flipped through her phone and held it out. He took it and frowned at the photo.
I do not recall seeing her. Someone named Lindsay wants to know what's up.
Oh, crap.
Cammy took her phone back. Some of her friends had finally texted her, wondering what had happened and where she was.
Everyone went to see this movie trilogy. The third one premiered at midnight or something, and the theater showed them all back to back. Hang on. I'm just gonna let them know that I'm okay.
He poured another cup of tea and watched her hawk-like while she texted her friends that she was all right. The look bothered her, like she was a lab specimen and he was studying her. Before she managed to message to Melissa, her phone screen faded to terrifying, ominously black.
Oh, snap. No!
Something the matter.
My phone's dead. Crap, I need to charge it.
I'll retrieve whatever you need.
Dracula said when he rose again.
My charger's in my bag. It's on the floor over there somewhere.
He glanced at the mess on the floor. Undaunted, he made his way over and searched through her things, coming back with the charger from both her tablet and her phone, and her tangled earbuds.
Thanks. I just need this plug-in.
She glanced around the room. The wallpaper had flower-like designs. The wood trim was elaborate, highly stylized. There were lamps sticking out of the walls, but they weren't lit. Only the fireplace gave any light. Disconcertingly, there were also weird-looking animal skeletons displayed in antique cases. Cammy swallowed.
Allow me.
Dracula offered. She let him take the phone and her tablet. He took them with him to what she assumed was the kitchen, the room where he'd made the tea. She had her head in her hands when he returned.
It is quite late. Do you have place to stay now that you've lost your apartment? I can drive you there.
He offered. She blinked up at him.
You'd give me a lift, even though I know who you are and about everything that I've seen? What about keeping vampires or the masquerade, or what about keeping vampires or the masquerade or whatever a secret?
I am very much doubt that one young woman preaching to world about existence of vampires will undo hundreds years worth of conspiracy. On contrary, it is humans who want monsters to stay out of sight, more than simply out of... It is humans who want monsters to stay out of sight, more than simply out of sight.
Wait. So there is this whole masquerade thing going on, but it's not you guys trying to hide and rule us all from the shadows. It's like something else going on?
I don't doubt that most monsters still live in are in hiding. But humans are the ones who benefit from state of affairs more than monsters.
Oh, is that why you weren't very careful about not letting me see stuff? You don't care?
I assumed that you are intelligent enough to know better than to report to authorities that you suspected you had been attacked by a pack of vampires.
Well, she mumbled.
Thinking of Brian, he was just a baby cop, but she felt pretty sure that he wouldn't believe any of this.
Yeah, I guess.
Then I don't have to bother. Even if you had, I doubt anything would have come of it, short of a report of a young woman who had taken leave of her absence. You are hardly first person I've met who has pierced this fragile veil that separates monsters from human.
What if the cops come across all those bodies, though?
They won't. I told my employer's location, they'll have it all cleaned up by now.
You've talked about your employers before. Who do you work for?
Dracula smirked.
I think it would be better if I don't drag you into that quagmire, but perhaps you can puzzle it out on your own. If in any case, where will you stay tonight? With your parents, perhaps?
Cammy didn't crinkle her nose, even though she wanted to.
No, I was going to swing up by my friend's apartment and see if I could crash there for a while. I don't know what I'm going to do now, though. I have to find Heather first, but I can't afford rent all on my own, and all of my friends already have roommates or live with their parents, so it would be a real inconvenience if I just moved in with one of them. But I think I can stay with someone for a while.
Dracula poured her more tea and refilled his own cup.
This might be presumptuous, but as I treated you rather badly when you arrived, I feel compelled to make amends. If you like, you may stay here for a time rather than burden your friends.
What?
You may stay here for a time as my guest. I have room enough, and you can have key to your own chambers if you are concerned about my intentions.
She hadn't been, but now she was. Did he mean blood-sucking or other things?
I don't know,
she said. She didn't. She hadn't just met a vampire from Europe somewhere, living right here in Seattle. Apparently vampires... she had just met a vampire from Europe somewhere, living here in Seattle. Apparently, vampires were real. She noticed one of the specimen skeletons looked like a small winged squirrel of some sort, so probably other things too, but ignoring all that, wasn't Dracula supposed to be, like, a bad guy? Like, a monster in real life and in fiction? She thought that she'd heard he was some sort of famous historical psychopath. She looked him up and down. He didn't look like a psychopath. But what would a psychopath look like? Brian was always saying that you couldn't tell by appearances. Serial killers were charming, weren't they? Well-dressed and presentable, just like this guy was, and in his immaculate black suit, sipping tea in front of a huge Gothic fireplace.
Didn't you used to kill people?
Used to? I suppose it's been a while. What do you mean? When do you mean?
CIA, I just see talks of the CIA twerking for the CIA. Has it worked? Have you confused your CIA agent?
Whenever you were in Transylvania.
I was hardly ever in Transylvania in the way that you mean.
He pronounced it in the way that she expected some Eastern European to say Transylvania.
But yes, I killed people. When necessary.
So, when did you become a vampire?
That is an excellent question. I'm not entirely certain. Sometime after death, but when and how I cannot say.
Huh. How? I mean, why is that so hard to figure out? Wouldn't that have been obvious?
You might think so, but no, it wasn't. I became aware again and found myself in Turkey. But it seems to me I must have been walking about for some time before that, though I cannot say for how long.
But you did kill people. Lots of people?
More than some of my contemporaries, perhaps, though we weren't comparing numbers. If you were worried that I planned to put you on a stake, I have no intentions of doing anything of the sort. Unless you plan on robbing me. I don't think you are a thief. You are concerned with being a burden to your friends. That shows some sort of character, and that you are not a parasite. You seem brave, besides.
Brave?
That was a sort of compliment that she could get behind.
Yes, naive foolhardily, but took courage to track me down. That reminds me, how did you come up the road? There are things in the woods all around my estate that kill intruders.
Cammy felt lightheaded, so when she felt that she was being watched...
Never mind. Never mind that at all. I'll speak to them. You look like you need rest. Do you wish to stay or go?
What did she want to do? She had come all of the way out here to find out more about what she would actually... She had come all the way out here to find out more about what the world actually had that the world actually had vampires in it. She had hoped to convince the homeowner to train her in the ways of the secret world like a movie or something, but this wasn't really what she was expecting. Still, vampires were real, and she had been rescued by the most famous, most powerful one of them all.
I guess that means that I could still learn about what is really going on.
But could she trust this guy? If he hadn't been a regular person instead of a vampire and a famous historical psycho, the choice would have been easy. Well, she supposed if he had been a regular human, he might still be a murderer or something. It just never crossed her mind that a human vampire slayer could be dangerous to humans. A vampire hunter would be working to protect humanity from the creatures of the night, right? And here was the creature of the night hunting the others because some mysterious people told him to.
Who do you work for exactly?
Truly, it may be dangerous for you to pry too deeply.
I can't stay here unless I know why you do what you do.
He grinned wryly.
I have extended an invitation. You needn't accept it if you do not wish.
He stared into her soul, so she averted her eyes.
But I kind of want to,
she thought. She looked around the room, all the antique furniture, the paintings. There were even a few weapons mounted on the walls now that her eyes were accustomed to the dark. Could she really pass up an opportunity like this? This was better than winning the lottery for Miles, wasn't it? No one got the chance to interview a vampire. She giggled at that.
Okay, thanks. I really appreciate it, but just for a little while, until I get another place to stay and find my roommate.
Of course.
He nodded magnanimously, as though he were conferring a favor by agreeing.
And maybe you could tell me more about the world, what the world's really like?
Perhaps you don't really wish to know. Or perhaps you do. But in stages, I think. There is a great deal to know, and you have just survived a very trying ordeal.
When he said it all hit her. The feeling of those cold hands on her, the slack-jawed heads all over the ground, her absolute helplessness. She gasped and started to ugly cry. She didn't want to, but she couldn't stop. Her shoulders trembled, her hands shook all over again, and she couldn't get her breath. Dracula, and she couldn't get over how weird that was. Offered her a handkerchief. It wasn't the one that he'd used to wipe the pepper spray off his face with, thankfully. He went to the kitchen while she tried plugging up her stupid tear ducts and blowing her nose.
Here.
He offered her a glass with some sort of clear liquid, just enough to cover the bottom with centimeters. She guessed that it was alcohol of some sort.
Thanks, but I'm not old enough to drink yet. 3 weeks, though.
I won't tell anyone.
She snort-giggled. The whole thing was absurd. She took the glass and sipped it. It burned. Whatever it was strong, but she liked it.
Whoa! What is this?
Tuika, traditionally offered to guests. I brew my own. Something to keep me busy.
That's some good moonshine.
Moonshine,
he repeated, unhappily under his breath. He helped her to pick up her things, seemingly unperturbed by the tampons she snatched, and hid as fast as she could. She hoped that wasn't going to be awkward later if he really drank blood. He led her to an enormous staircase which had elaborately carved pillars as thick as both her arms together, supporting a banister polished as so smooth that it seemed to glow in the firelight. At the top of the stairs was nothing but gloom and dark shapes, as the firelight couldn't manage to reach that high.
You know, we have this thing called electricity now.
Without a word, Dracula reached out to the wall and flicked on a light switch. The glass lamps that lined all of the walls all flickered and took on a warm, dim yellow glow, suffusing the place with an effect like steady candlelight, inviting and not so bright that it burned the eyes.
For some time, yes.
Sorry, it was so dark up here.
I don't need lights. I don't often use them.
Then why have them?
For guests.
You have guests?
On occasion. Come.
He gestured for her to follow up the stairs. He showed her to a beautiful room with a real 4-poster bed, antique lamps with fringes, and a dresser of polished dark woods. Everything was spotless and dust-free. Maybe he had servants. There was no way that he could keep this whole place clean on his own.
This is amazing.
I have not run the water taps in this wing for some time, so I advise against drawing a bath for a moment. Once you retire, I shall do my best to clean them so that they will be ready by tomorrow. There is the washroom.
He indicated at the end of the
hall. It is a bit late for proper tour tonight, but should you need to find your way, there is a lamp beside the bed, and the way to the kitchen is just downstairs past foyer. If you should see anyone about who is not me, don't speak to them or interact with them in any way. Will there be anything that you require from this evening?
Yeah, thanks. I have work tomorrow, but I don't have a ride. Is it all right if one of my friends picks me up here? Also, who lives here?
He frowned, looking positively menacing. She stepped back in consternation.
I think it would be unwise to have your friends here. I can convey you to work. What time do you need to arrive? And no, other humans. Servants of mine, whom I expect that you will meet in due course.
I work during the day. I don't think...
That is no trouble. What time?
She raised her eyebrow.
You can go out during the day?
He drew in a breath and let out an old, grumpy dog sigh.
Yes, I can.
You don't burst into, flames in the sunlight?
No.
What about other vampires?
Was he special, or was that just something wrong about everything?
Most of them cannot be awake or away from graves past the dawn, but that doesn't mean that they catch on fire in the rays of sun. Some do, but that is new phenomena.
Oh, well, I'm supposed to be at work by 8. I hope I'm better by then. I need the money so bad. I'm still shaky.
That will pass, but please take your time. You need rest. I must also warn you, do not wander grounds outside without me. There are things that live in wilderness that I would not trust with your safety or your life.
Like what?
Several things. Wood wives for one and satyrs for another. Some other things.
What's a woodwife?
Heavens above, girl, do you want to get any sleep or not?
Honestly, I don't know if I can. I mean, I watched 20 people die tonight.
They didn't die tonight. They died some time ago.
But they looked like people, and weren't they people? I mean, before? And when you killed them, they still looked like people, and...
Was there anything else that she could say? Anything else that she could say to him? Did he even understand human emotions? She sniffed and blinked at the wall.
Good night. Given when you must be at your place of work, you will need to make an early start. It will likely take longer than an hour to drive there.
He held out an old-fashioned key for her to take.
Yeah. Thanks. Good night.
She took the key. It was heavy and old-fashioned, and it would go really well on her keychain or on a necklace. She liked the necklace idea better.
I'm so stupid.
She thought to herself. He departed, closing the door behind her. Cammy dumped her things on top of the dresser in an up-tidy heap. Then she looked down at herself. For the first time, it occurred to her that despite all of the head lobbing that had gone on, there hadn't been any blood splatter all over the place. Her clothes were damp from drizzle and sweat, but they weren't covered with gore. Thank goodness. She rifled through a pile to find some of her clothes that were then clean and more or less dry so that she could sleep in them. The bed was like nothing that she'd ever encountered. It was huge, very, very soft. She sank right into it like it was a giant dog bed. Why were those always soft and better than human beds? Someone ought to look into that. The mattress was so warm and the blankets were so heavy. It was like being inside a giant toasty sandwich and an egg or a hug. She fell asleep instantly. Why are there? What's with the mirrors on the ceiling? Oh, is this where we're gonna go, Emerald? Oh, Barry's got the background. I think that Usagi said that was a note from her editor, which is why they kept coming up, because I also mentioned it in my notes to her at some point, and she was like, so I don't know, but it does read very unnatural. There we go. Sorry. Cord fell out, and then my thing was like, yeah, you have to reset your sound program. Yeah. I looked down and the light was off, and yeah. Yeah, I had to go refresh it. Hey, thanks for joining us, Thalamagist. Hope you had an enjoyable time. We're probably going to do one more chapter. But I was going to say, if you saw my review that I did on this channel for this book, I think I said that the 3 first chapters were the hardest to get through and where it was kind of leaning like this. And then you start getting it more into the action because now the characters have kind of settled in to the story. And so stuff starts happening more, and that made it way more enjoyable after you got through the intro. I think that's what I said in my thing, because I remember that being like, okay, we're getting some information here. Can we go? Brian Warren had totally forgotten that he'd left his phone on silent. He was ending his shift when he checked and saw the number of messages. What's the matter, girlfriend miss ya? Asked Hendricks. No, looks like... Hang on. He tapped the first voicemail from his sister. Hey, BB, turn your phone on. Has Cammy been blowing up your phone too? Something happened with her and Heather, and she's on the street right now. I can't get out there. Please tell me you can. He scrolled down. The voicemails came from Cammy were hours old. So were the texts. That was the bad news. What's the matter, rookie? Someone behind him asked. sounded like gold. He ignored the comments and dialed Cammy. The phone rang, no answer. He dialed Heather, same thing. He dialed Melissa. Did you find out what's going on with Cammy? His sister said. No. Are you still at work? Did you get a chance to talk to her? No, and yes, I'm still here. It's been crazy since last night. I can't leave. I don't know if anyone else went to go and get her either. She said no one was answering. I just got off the clock. I'm heading straight there. Let me know how she is, okay? The girl is too cute for her own good. Brian hung up. I gotta bail, he told Hendricks. I gotta go pick someone up. She might be in trouble. Oh, she? Yeah, the goal of the character is to find her friend. But then she got attacked. And so now it's settling in, and she'll jump right back on finding her friend here after we get through the introductory phase. One of the other things I think with this story specifically was initially it was imagined for like a visual medium like movies or television and then was transposed over. And I think on a second read, I'm seeing a lot more of how it fits into like the beats for a TV show that was then transposed over. I gotta bail. She, Hendricks teased. This she, someone you're thinking of impressing with your uniform and your... See ya. Brian slapped Hendricks' shoulder and headed out of the locker room. Cammy's shoreline apartment wasn't far away. He considered biking over, but if something had happened. With Suze's help, he managed to convince the dispatch officer to let him take the cruiser just in case. Cammy wasn't home when he arrived, so he knocked at doors until he got to the landlord's number. Leaning against the entrance door, its handle warped from some hooligan kicking it. He punched in the numbers. Hello? Is this Mr. Knox? He asked. Yeah, who is calling? My name is Officer Brian Warren with Seattle PD. Do you have a moment to talk to me? Dead silence on the line. You monster, Brian thought. Certainly, Knox eventually answered. What's about? Are you on the premises of Great Ways Apartment at the moment, Mr. Knox? Another span of silence. Yeah? Would you mind coming down to meet me? Knox agreed. When he came out the worn front door, the old man smiled politely. Something the matter, officer? Knox asked, grinning like a snake. He looked Brian over, obviously noting that he was out of uniform. I'm off duty right now, but I need to know why you evicted two of your tenants last night, Camilla Lilly and Heather Blake. Who? Two young women who have lived here for almost a year. A petite girl with curly black hair and another with light brown hair in their early 20s. Oh, them. They didn't pay. I sent notices, they didn't pay. I moved their stuff to the streets. The one girl, dark-haired one, she asked me why she didn't, and said that she didn't get it, didn't know that there was a problem. Wanted an extension. Do you realize that you turned two young women onto the street with nowhere to go? Brian seethed. They didn't pay. Lagging. You're not that far behind, Sarah. You're good. You're good. Brian racked his brain. It was probably illegal somehow, but he didn't remember what laws applied off the top of his head. He would go look it up later, but first he had to find Cammy. Did you see where she went? He asked Knox. She got in a car and left. Don't know about the other one. Haven't seen her in a few days. That meant Heather was probably using again. Cammy must have gotten a ride from someone, but Brian didn't have all of the numbers for the rest of her friends. When was that? I don't know. Very late. I was going to call the police to get her off the property. No pay, no stay. That's what I say. Thanks for your time, he told Knox, wanting to punch his teeth out. The old man only had half of them. He probably wouldn't miss the rest. He called Melissa again. Hey, baby. Did you find her? No. Landlord said that she got in a car. Did he say where she went? No. Do you have Kenzie or one of her other friends' numbers? Cammy might have met up with one of them. I don't think so. Let me check. Why don't you try and call her cell again? Brian did and got no answer, then got Kenzie's number via text. She might be up. She worked at the same coffee shop, and they sometimes had workers in before dawn. Hello? Oh, that's hello, Kenzie answered in a theatrical sing-song voice. Hello, is this Kenzie? My name is Brian. I'm one of Cammie's friends. Oh, hey. I've heard of you. What's up? Did Cammie meet up with you last night? No, but she texted me that she found a place to stay, so we didn't have to freak out. Brian checked. He had missed messages. That's what he got for panicking and jumping to a conclusion, he supposed. Oh, I got one, too. Sorry to bother you. If she gets in touch with you, will you tell her to let me know? Sure thing. Bye. Brian stared at his phone. She texted him that she was all right, but he wasn't convinced. Something could have happened. Someone else could have used her phone or forced her to send the text. He dialed again. Come on. Pick up. She didn't dream. Very odd for her. Soft, pale light coaxed her out of her deep slumber. She pushed her head from under her covers. Her heart leapt into her chest when she couldn't recognize her surroundings, and she jumped out of bed. As she spun around, searching, unthinking for the exit, she remembered that she had escaped the pale people last night, come to the mansion halfway up a mountain, and met a guy who called himself Dracula, and she was staying at his house. She sat back on the bed and took stock of the situation. It had all happened, and she was staying in a mansion. Remembering Heather was missing, she looked at the nightstand for her phone, but it wasn't there. She checked her bag next before she remembered that it was charging downstairs in the kitchen. After throwing on some leggings and her shoes, Cammie timidly opened the door. She hadn't even locked it last night, but it didn't seem like anyone or anything had even bothered her. Was that too trusting of her? She didn't know. Cammie had just realized that there was no toilet paper until she was too lucky. Cammie had not realized that there was no toilet paper until it was too late. Luckily, for some reason, she still hadn't kicked the habit of taking tissues with her everywhere she went, like her mother kept telling her, and had chosen to hang her bag within reaching distance of the bathroom knob last night, as she did but she did wonder why there didn't seem to be any toilet paper anywhere in the bathroom. Maybe he doesn't go to the bathroom? He drank tea, though, but it had to go somewhere, right? She'd have to replace most of her toiletries. She hadn't managed to salvage them all. Another check on her bank account made her heart sink. Conditioner or food? Ugh. She decided against a bath in favor of finding her host and asking about Heather. The hallway was dark except for the faint glow of her early morning light that managed to find its way in through the windows at the end of the hall and by the stairway. The mansion sounded abandoned. There was no radio, no sound of people moving around, nothing. Silent as a proverbial tomb. A chill ran up and down her spine. There were no sounds of her hosts when she descended the stairs or when she went to the kitchen. She found her phone resting on a counter next to an old-fashioned taupe-colored phone with the dial that she had to turn with her finger. Her phone showed 6:45, which seemed right since the sun was only just up, later than she had planned, but she ought to be able to get to work with time for breakfast. The cast-iron stove stood on the other side of the double-hung door with the window in its upper half. Her friends had texted her back, and she saw that Brian had called a few times.
Crap.
She called him back. Cammie, are you all right? What happened last night?
I got evicted. I never got a notice, and Heather stopped paying the rent. I don't know when, but I haven't been able to get a hold of her.
The blood rushed in her head. Brian was a cop. She could tell him to look for Heather, and he'd have the whole precinct out looking. But if Heather had been kidnapped... Okay, I just had to check something. But if Heather had been kidnapped by vampires, would the cop be any use against them? Thinking that, she glanced up and saw Dracula standing in the doorway watching her. She gasped and jumped. You all right?
Yeah, I was just startled. Anyway, she hasn't gotten back to me since last night. I don't know where she is.
I'll look for Heather. I know some places. Where are you? Are you safe? Did you have to go to your parents? Cammy chuckled and covered her eyes. Despite all that had happened, she could be grateful that she hadn't had to call them.
No, I'm staying with a new.
She studied her host who still watched her, his hands folded over each other.
Friend. I'm sorry if I worried you. I was just scared.
I'm glad to hear that you're all right, and I'm sorry I missed your calls. My phone was on silent, and I had a lot of...
That's all right. I know that you're busy. It's all worked out, though.
She knew that wouldn't make him much happier, but she couldn't think of anything else to say. Okay, well, so long as you're all right.
I am. Thanks for worrying about me. Bye.
Once she had hung up, she looked up at Dracula.
Give me some sort of a warning next time. You scared me right out of my skin.
My apologies. I'm not accustomed to having guests at this hour. I shall make efforts to announce my approach in future. Sleep well.
Yeah, like the dead.
Cammy caught her breath when she caught what she said. She searched his face for any sign that he was angry. At least he wasn't offended. Wait.
At this hour?
So he had guests at other hours? There was a story there.
Imagine you're hungry.
You have no idea. Do you have cereal?
She asked, feeling a little silly asking whether Dracula had cereal, then giggling when she realized he sort of already did.
No, I never pick up that habit. I cannot bring myself to eat food that lunatics refuse unless they had no other choice. I have eggs, bread, pork.
Eggs and toast are fine. I'm a vegetarian, actually, so no meat, please. Thanks.
He fetched eggs and a half a loaf of bread from what must be a pantry.
I can cook them, thanks.
She looked around the room and set her eyes on the cast iron stove. She'd never actually seen one in real life. As she approached, she felt heat coming off of the entire surface, all the way down to her feet.
I lit it earlier this morning so it would be warm.
Explained, then gestured to the rag tied around to the oven door handle. She supposed that it was there so that she wouldn't burn herself. There was a cast iron skillet set on the range.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard that you can do some really great things cooking in one of these, but I've never thought that I'd get to use one. How long have you had this place, if you don't mind me asking?
About a century.
And you didn't update anything?
She glanced at the old-fashioned phone. Did that actually work? Who would even call him? Did he have friends?
After breakfast, I'll show you around the grounds. If there is time, I shall introduce you to some of my servants and tenants.
Tenants? You're a landlord.
She was trying to figure out how to cook the eggs in the skillet. It didn't look non-stick, and she didn't see any olive oil or coconut oil or anything. At last, she spotted a blot of butter sitting on the table, a silver butter knife beside it. Reluctantly, she glopped some of it into the skillet and set it on the stove.
Any monster that comes to me seeking asylum, and who can cohabitate peacefully with others and with me, I regard as tenants, not guests. They perform certain services in exchange for a place to live.
Sounds like a serf.
Cammy grumped with a vague memory of some history class or another. He was old-fashioned.
No, they come and go as they please. However, it is my land. They must abide by my rules if they wish to live on it. They must not interfere with any guests who come onto property. They must not go out to hunt humans or bring them here or draw unnecessary attention to me in their fellows, or fight amongst themselves or steal from me.
She was starting to think that he took stealing somewhat personally.
So you're like a halfway house for other vampires.
He raised an eyebrow at her again.
I don't have any other vampires dwelling with me. Well, nothing that you would call such. I presume you mean European nobility who suck blood and are undead horrors?
His voice had gone flat and with an edge to it.
Yeah. Are there any other kind?
Good night, Ruth.
Yes, many. What I just described is very recent breed. I can count on one hand the number I know who match that description. None much older than 2 centuries.
Well, she considered whether it
Was wise to say, but aren't you a blood-sucking European nobility? Probably best to hold off on that. Maybe it was a touchy subject. On the other hand...
like who?
Sir Henry Irving, for one.
Who?
For some reason, he seemed amused that she didn't recognize the name. He said,
Also, Countess Egla, and both Count Saint Germains, who were the same person after all. I have heard rumors of Lord Byron might have come back after his untimely end, but have seen no evidence. The same holds true for Lady Widow Nadasi, that is Countess Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth Bathory, I believe she was Golden English.
Oh, she was the one who bathed in young girl's blood to keep her youth, right? Cammy said.
When he seemed surprised that she recognized that name, she explained,
And one of my friends is a horror fanatic. She's also read about serial killers. She said that's what Bathory did. Is that right? Is that how she became a vampire?
I wasn't interested in her action, as I was busy helping Michai Vitzul, Michael the Brave.
Was he a vampire too?
No.
She detected profound annoyance in his voice at the questions, even anger. He sure looked angry at being asked that. Lots of counts, she thought to herself. Maybe Stoker had been onto something with that after all. The eggs were crisping on the outside, so she looked around for a spatula, found one hanging on the wall and fetched it. Before she had to go searching for a plate, he opened a cabinet and procured a delicate china plate for her.
Thanks, that's beautiful,
she told him, admiring the dainty floral print that rimmed the ceramic. No? Porcelain? She couldn't say. It wasn't as though she ate off the fancy dinnerware every day. Even her parents had nothing this fine at home. He said nothing.
Did you get this when you were in England?
No, well, in Ireland.
You were in Ireland.
She slid the eggs onto the plate. Now she had to find the toaster, but look as she might, she didn't see one. Oh well, she sliced the bread on the plate along with the eggs.
I have been many places.
Hey, do you have a coffee maker?
He pressed his lips together.
I do not drink coffee. I have tea, however.
That'll work.
She conceded, disappointed. She thought, you're supposed to say I don't drink coffee, but didn't say so. She watched him set an ornate pewter tea kettle on the stove. With nothing to do but wait, she seated herself at the table in the middle of the kitchen to eat. He took his seat opposite to her.
Are you having anything?
No. Thank you, no, I already ate.
So you eat breakfast. I mean, like, real food, not,
Yes, I eat real food.
He told her. She wanted to ask more about it, the vampire that ate and drank like anyone else, and here he was, with the sun up and no problems. He'd said he drank blood, but she felt doubtful now. In fact, she was starting to doubt he was really a vampire at all. Maybe this was all some sort of test to see if she was gullible. He was just a human vampire hunter after all, playing some elaborate sort of prank on her, or maybe just testing her to see if she could figure out that he was lying to prove her knowledge or something.
I'm confused. I mean, you eat and drink and you're all right in the sunlight, and I've heard you sigh, but I thought vampires were supposed to be dead. I mean, do you breathe?
I breathe, but I don't need to.
Why?
He shrugged.
Habit, I suppose. Some of the Polish vampires respire, so perhaps that's why.
He folded his fingers together self-consciously. That was weird. It was almost as though he was embarrassed.
But you drink blood too.
When I have to.
Which is when?
On occasion. More frequently if I exert myself or don't eat well.
So you have to kill people if you get really hungry?
I can get by on a mouthful at a time if I do not exert myself.
He corrected, still angry, maybe even angrier than before. She tried to wrap her head around that. If he was telling her the truth, he was unlike any vampire that she had ever heard of.
So, garlic.
I find it repellent.
How about crosses? Are those repellent too?
Crosses? No.
So where did the whole idea of crosses bother vampires come from then?
From Stoker. And that was crucifixes, not crosses.
There's a difference?
I take it you're neither Orthodox nor Catholic.
She shook her head. He nodded.
Are you?
Yes.
Which?
I was excommunicated from Orthodox faith when I converted to Catholicism, but that his conversion was to secure a political advantageous marriage.
So you're Catholic?
Officially, yes, but I prefer to attend Orthodox services, although I do not participate in their sacraments.
You go to church? Wait, you can go into churches?
Some strigoi can do as much, some cannot. There is an enormous variation within the breed.
Wait, what's a strigoi? Like that show, The Strain?
What's that?
Cammy had no idea how to explain that she was binge watching the series with her friend Kinsey a few Halloweens prior. Heck, would it be insulting to say that she watched vampire shows sometimes? That her friend Lindsay adored vampire romances even though she didn't like to admit it? Surely that would be insulting to him if everything that everyone else knew about vampires was wrong.
It's just some show that I watched about vampires.
He didn't react.
Strigoi is a word that best describes what I am. They are the native vampires found where I come from. Vampire is a very broad term. It includes creatures ranging from Penegals to Maras to Owls.
What are those?
I don't think it wise to begin on that topic at the moment, but I would like to show you a little of the estate. We should leave shortly if you have any hope of being at your place of work on time, and focus on things that you should know immediately if you are going to stay here.
It's gonna take a while to explain all of that, huh?
There are thousands of types of vampires.
Thousands? Cammy was thunderstruck. Thousands. My gosh.
So, how does anyone learn how to deal with vampires if they are all that completely different?
There are differences, but there are also general categories into which they all tend to fall. Some are incorporeal, some are corpses, some are demons, and so forth. Some drink blood, some steal energy, some require more esoteric sustenance. It would take a great deal of time to explain everything.
The kettle whistled, so he rose to get it. He set it on one side of the stove, scooped some of the tea leaves out from the china pot, then poured the steam water over the tea. Taking the pot and the 2 cups and saucers on a tray, he sat them on the table. She noticed that the tea set was different from the last one last night. This one matched the plate that she was using.
Let that seep for a few minutes.
Yeah, that was one of the comments that I initially gave Usagi when I first read the book, and I was like, Chapter 3 is kind of super heavy on the information. I think this is the hardest chapter of the book, or was the hardest chapter of the book for me with my first read.
So, you said that you had servants.
Cammy prompted him. No choice but to wait for the rest.
Yes, a few. The main is the Domovoi, who has a wife and children.
Actually, I think that comment is also in my video where I was like, this is just like an encyclopedia of information about, like, you can tell that the author is knowledgeable and passionate about the supernatural creatures because they're all involved in here. And it's very much, I want to tell you about these characters, but I didn't quite think that it was necessary to put in this early in the book. especially if we're not meeting them. And this might play better if it was a television show, but in a book, I think the flow kind of got messed up in this chapter.
Oh yeah.
A domovoi.
The slave creature. Most of the time they are invisible, but you might see them if you have talent, or if they suffer a lapse in concentration. He will appear like a very hairy old man without clothing.
Cammy did not like the idea of a creepy, naked old man walking around the mansion invisible.
There are also a few brownies, though I can't imagine where they come from. They are small, humanoid, and unclothed as well. You likely won't see them either, but if you do, I would ask you that you not offer them any clothing or gifts.
Wait, like Harry Potter? Like house elves?
Dracula frowned at her as he poured them both a cup of tea.
It's a book series. In movies.
I see. I have heard versions of story about brownies helping shoemakers in which creatures are referred to as elves. Perhaps that is why you know them as such.
You don't get out much, I guess.
Not anymore. No.
There was again the implication that he had been more active once upon a time. I just want to click the page.
And you don't know what phone apps are either.
He looked at her over the rim of his cup as he drank. Hey, after that tour, when I get back from work,
I can teach you something about modern world, and then we'll teach each other.
He set his teacup down.
I would be very grateful, thank you. It seems that I have missed something in the last decade or so.
Decade or so? Sheesh. Who could say how out of date that he'd be at this point? The eggs and bread were gone. She'd been hungrier than she realized. Eager to learn more, she tried to chug the tea, but it had been too hot.
And did you find anything about Heather?
No, I wish to see your needs before setting out to find her.
What about that guy's phone that you took? Did it have anything on it?
She thought that she saw his jaw tighten. It occurred to her that if he was out of date, he probably didn't know what to do with the new phones. She remembered him fumbling with it last night.
You want me to look at it?
Please.
He pulled the phone out of his pocket. He had been carrying it this whole time, or had he been waiting for the chance to ask her? She took the phone and it was powered off. She turned it on to find that it was locked. Crap. She didn't know how to hack a phone, and she doubted that she could ask Brian to do it because there was bound to be vampire stuff on there. She had to figure it out one way or another. With no other ideas, she tried the most obvious unlocking pattern, a Z. When that didn't work, she tried it backwards, then on its side. Of all things, that did it. Ha! She showed him.
What did you do to make it respond?
I had to unlock it. Phones have passwords or patterns, so strangers can't use them. We can look at his messages now.
No, I mean, how did you get it to respond to your touch?
This set her back a moment.
It's a touch screen. You just touch it. Here.
She held it out.
Tap on that icon, the one that looks like an envelope.
Hesitantly, Dracula tapped the icon. Nothing happened. He tapped it again and got no response. He frowned, then tried tapping the rest of the screen to no effect. Even dragging his fingers across it earned no response at all.
Wow, you've got a bad case of the zombie fingers, huh? I get that sometimes when it's cold or when my hands are really dry. You could try blowing on them.
It occurred to her that what she had just said.
New phones detect something about your skin?
I think so. Electrical signals or something like that.
This was no good. He might not be able to use new phones at all, not without a stylus. It occurred to her that the driver from last night had used one. That must mean that other vampires had trouble with the new technology. Something to remember in the future. But first, she opened the messages. The two most recent were outgoing. On my way and got her. Be there soon. Cammy's blood ran cold. The driver had sent to get her. But why? Dracula read the messages over her shoulders.
Call your friend again.
What's going on?
Cammy asked. Her fingers tingled. Her hands began to shake.
Call your friend again.
Cammy pulled up Heather's name. Hi, it's Heather.
Heather, pick up.
Cammy shouted into the phone when the message ended. No one picked up. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Dracula watching her, but he didn't say anything. He didn't even try to comfort her.
You think Heather's dead, don't you?
I have my reserving judgment at the moment. It is possible that you run into the same group, but it is also possible, as you have said, that she is looking for drugs or working odd shift.
You really think so?
I just admitted to not thinking much at all of the situation. At the moment, anything is possible. However,
He looked her into the eyes.
if you should see your friend again, I would not trust her.
No.
Cammy shook her head.
No.
He pulled out his flip phone and dialed. She wondered if he was calling his mysterious employer.
Hello, Malcolm. Have you ever hunted? Have you been hunting any of the brazen new breeded vampires that have been popping up around city? No? Have you heard anything about them? I see. I don't suppose you have heard anything about it. I believe the word is app, called Green Life. I don't know. Some sort of taxi service.
He looked out one of the windows.
When do you expect to be here? That's fine. I'll be out. Probably in Vineyard. Goodbye.
Who is that?
A comrade of mine. I have worked with him in past, Malcolm Merrick. I called him last night about you tracking your phone.
Oh, you don't work for him?
No. He and I find ourselves in similar position, though his is less complicated than mine.
Why is yours complicated?
That will be difficult to explain in its entirety. Before we get bogged down in that, though, I would like to show you some of the grounds so that you don't get lost, or worse.
Worse, she wondered. He kept saying that there was dangerous things all around here. Was she really ready to see any of them? Maybe they're all invisible like his servants. Which did not make her feel any better. But it wasn't going to do her any good worrying, and the sooner that she learned about them, the better off that she'd be, right? She'd know how to survive. Survive. That had a whole new meaning to it now. Not survive until your next paycheck or survive finals, but survive in a world full of monsters. It made her shiver, but she didn't want to turn back. She knew what the ordinary world was like. There hadn't been monsters, but it had been a purgatory full of drowning and financial troubles and no hopes of a future that mattered. If she learned how to fight back, she might actually be able to accomplish something. Cammy finished her tea, except for the bottom with the leaves.
Hey, do you read tea leaves?
One of the regulars at the Mindful Bean said that it was something that she did.
I was never interested in divination.
Dracula said. Oh well.
One more house rule. Please be tidy. My domovoi will get very angry if residents do not do their part.
He pointed toward the sink.
What will he do if he gets angry?
He will stop protecting house. He is easily appeased, but he is also easily angered. If you should forget something, please correct it as soon as you remember.
Oh, that didn't sound so bad. She had been worried that the invisible hairy naked man might kill her or something.
All right.
Dracula. She felt weird calling him that. Led the way out of the door that they had entered in the previous night. He stepped out into the daylight, sure enough, and nothing happened to him. He didn't even squint.
This is back door. As it happened, you took road my friends use, and it confused some of my guardians. Your approach was also haphazard, that they doubted you posed a credible threat.
What friends?
Also, what guardians?
Some of my countrymen, among others.
So he had friends. That surprised her. Now that the sun was out, she could see that there was a gravel driveway that led around one side of the house. On the other side of the driveway turned into dirt, forming a clearing into the trees.
As I said last night, there are many creatures that live on my lands, those who have come to me seeking asylum.
Asylum?
safety and a place to call home. Many have been driven out of their native lands and have been hunted,
By humans.
mostly by my employers.
Who are not humans?
They are humans, and they are most dedicated to eradicating anything that isn't. Ah,
He had led her to an old-fashioned well, and with a wheel and a bucket and everything.
there is a spirit who lives in this well. Do not look into its depth. She may drag you down and drown you.
This was sounding like a worse idea all the time.
You can draw water from well. Simply do not look into it.
Okay.
There are wood elves, Rizalki, and Vili, who make their homes in the woods. They are somewhat similar. They look like human women, and our untrained eye wouldn't be able to tell that they are not. If you see any women in the woods, return at once. Don't talk to them or try to engage with them at all. Since you are female, they may not bother you, but it doesn't hurt to be cautious of everything.
Everything that lives here is dangerous, huh?
They came to a stone wall with a wooden gate. He opened the gate and gestured to go before. It would have seemed charmingly polite, except that she wasn't sure that there weren't killer monsters on the other side. Hesitantly, she stepped through and saw what looked like miles of vineyard.
Wow.
Gabby, you just saying that because you want the freaking well mommies to smother you. We know. We absolutely know.
Not everything that lives here is dangerous, though many are. The nymphs are harmless.
Nymphs.
They also look like human women.
How helpful.
You probably won't see them. Much of the supernatural has grown quite shy over the centuries.
He pointed at a shady patch of earth beside the corner of the house. Cammy spotted a patch of watermelons growing under the shade of the oak tree that tickled the eaves above.
Don't eat those. They are vampires.
Vampire watermelons? Oh, how? Do they suck blood?
By and large, they only harass my cows, but they move sometimes on their own and they bleed if struck hard enough.
How in the world are there vampire watermelons?
Sometimes, if they are left in the moonlight, pumpkins or watermelons can become vampires, but I suspect those become such because of that is where I often pour out water with my blood in it.
Water with... Wait, does that happen a lot?
If I'm wounded, I think it is less risky than I pour it down the drain.
Your blood turns things into vampires.
It can. I must warn you never to come into contact with it.
Good to know. You have cows?
And chickens and sheep and pigs, the milk, eggs, and so forth in kitchen almost will always be fresh.
Nice.
She followed him out toward the fence that separated the vineyard from the house.
I grow my own grapes and make my own wine here, especially with help.
He stopped as a man carrying a basket stepped out of the rows of grapes. No, not a man. He looked like a hairy man with a full beard, but he had little goat horns and goat legs.
Oh, a satyr.
Cammy said. So it was all true. She had been fighting with that little nagging doubt that she was just being fooled, or that her host was simply leading her on. Now she knew. Everything that she had thought she knew about the world was wrong. The satyr stared at her, surprised, then looked to Dracula, then back at her.
This is Kemi. She will be staying here as my guest.
Cammy wondered about the emphasis that he put on the word guest.
Go tell the others.
The satyr bowed his head and slunk off, following the wall. He cast a glance over his shoulder at Cammy.
No one wears clothes around here, do they?
Not many. Do not come out here alone when they are working. Understood?
What? Or satyrs will try to kill me too?
No. They might try to rape you, though.
Cammy stared at his face, not even the tiniest hint of a smile.
That's not funny.
I wasn't trying to be. If they were women, they can be unpredictable. If they see women, they can be unpredictable. So long as I am present, they will leave you alone. If I am not, I can't say what they might or might not do.
You have rapists living on your property?
She could deal with some of them killing people. They were monsters after all. But rapists?
That's sick. Why would you keep them here?
They know wine, and they have nowhere else to go. To be honest, I was surprised that they were still any alive. I had thought them extinct hundreds of years ago. They are nature's spirits of some sort, and not well adapted to farm life or dwelling close to humans.
I wonder why.
You might not believe it, but they are actually very well-meaning.
You were defending them?
They are not human. They do not think like humans. They are very childlike in most respects and not interested in pursuing and only interested in pursuing pleasures. They do not actually understand what they are doing, and that is why I warn you to avoid them. They do not understand that what is pleasurable to them may be unpleasant to others. It is in their nature to seek out the nymphs who reciprocate their attention. As I said, they are creatures of myth, not humans. They ought not live near humans.
They don't understand that they're rapists.
No, they don't. In the same way that children do not understand how cruel they can be to each other.
Cami crossed her arms. This did not sit well at all.
Are there a lot of monsters here that rape people?
On my property? No, just the satyrs. And it has not been a problem before, as I have either been present or to monitor them whenever anyone has come here, or sent them away to grumble in the wilderness. However, you will be taking up residence here, and I may not be present at all times, so I wish for you to be cautious.
And you approve of what they do?
Approval has nothing to do with it. They are what they are, as are we all. They are not malicious, nor are they treacherous. They have been hunted nearly to extinction and cannot survive by hiding as others can. So long as they abide by my rules while they live here, they have a safe haven.
A safe haven for rapists and monsters that kill people.
This was a mistake.
Well, I don't know how comfortable I am staying here if you've got a bunch of monsters that want to rape me.
She crossed her arms.
You do not have to stay here if you don't wish to.
It's fine. It's just them. It's everybody. Everybody else will kill you, but the satyrs are the only rapists. It's fine.
Wow, you really don't get it, do you? I bet you've never had to worry about what it's like for someone like me.
He narrowed his eyes at her.
You mean to say that because I am male, I don't know what it means to fear being raped?
Obviously.
His eyes narrowed more. His jaw tightened. Finally, he looked away.
It's a shame my brother is dead, or else you could tell him that. I wonder what he would have to say in response.
What does your brother have to do with anything?
You don't have to be a female to be preyed on sexually.
He seemed angry, though he didn't raise his voice. He just spoke through his teeth. An old-fashioned ringtone drew her attention, and Dracula pulled his flip phone from his jacket.
We're in Vineyard. Come around.
To her, he said,
You presume a great deal.
He added nothing more, and gestured that she go before him back the way that they had come.
You have a brother?
She asked. He glanced over his shoulder at her, clearly still angry.
Had. Several, in fact.
They're all dead?
Humans are not in the habit of living for centuries, but that hardly matters, as most of my family were killed. The history buff you is screaming, are there parts of this that are speaking to you, Gabby, as a history buff? Because I felt like that's what really connected for me as I was reading, even though we're getting like a bunch of information dumping right now. There's clearly a love of history and a love of mythology that is put into this, which is why we're getting all of this.
Oops, I was on the wrong voice. And it comes in also more later, like there's a lot of Vlad history in here because the author did so much research that it's very interesting to listen to her talk about it.
About you.
He glared.
No.
He turned away. They went back through the gate as the cherry-red car pulled around to the side of the house, making its way toward them. It stopped and the door popped open. A man in his late 20s or early 30s stepped out, dressed in a leather jacket and expensive high-top shoes. His jet-black hair was styled. Stubble sprinkled his jaw. He had hazel yellow eyes and a bronze skin. He smiled at them. His teeth were dazzling white. He looked like a male model on his way to a photo shoot. "Hey, Vlad," he said. He then pulled a small cooler and a manila folder from his car. "Hey, I was hoping that you could do me a solid." He walked over. Dracula took the cooler hesitantly, glancing at Cammy before he accepted the folder. Malcolm held out his hand for Cammy to take. "Hey, Malcolm Merrick of the Order of Ophois. Who are you with?" he asked. He had a smile to melt the heart of any romantic that he flashed it at.
Hi, I'm Cammy. Who am I with?
Who
Who am I with?
Come to think of it, Dracula had wanted to know who she worked for, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, which order or whatever, Malcolm said, his smile losing its shine.
Cammy is here as guest.
Dracula told him. Malcolm raised his eyebrow, then looked Cammy back up and down.
She's a little young.
She's a little young for you, isn't she? Don't be crass.
Don't be Chris. She's only found out about what the world is really like last night and needed safe haven. I would never bring a one-night stand here.
Malcolm's eyes widened. He looked Cammy up and down once more. Are you serious? He looked from one of them to the other, then clutched his head. Vlad, are you messing with me? Tell me that you're messing with me.
I am not.
This is not happening. What is she doing here?
She came all the way here on her own last night because I wanted to learn about vampires and stuff.
Malcolm's eyebrows knotted together. You wanted to learn about vampires and stuff. Are you crazy? You wanted to be involved in any of this insanity? Trust me. You don't want to be involved in any of this insanity. Trust me on that.
Well, I think I can make my own decisions. Thank you very much.
Okay, sure. Has he been giving you the grand tour? You liking it so far? Malcolm asked, pointing to the vineyard. Met anyone that you didn't like? She couldn't argue with him there. Of everything that she'd heard about so far, the satyrs disgusted her the most. Malcolm must have seen something in her expression because he nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, and you think they're bad? Just wait till his bosses hear about you. The mysterious employers again.
Why? Who are they? What will they do?
In reverse order, bury you or feed you to something so they can study the whole process. And they're your government, by the way. Who else could keep the lid on this whole mess? You are in way over your head. Cammy looked at Dracula. He looked back, his face unmoved, unsympathetic, and offering absolutely no reassurance.
You work for the government?
Yes, unofficially of course. And I wouldn't say work myself.
What would you say?
Dracula turned to Malcolm.
What do you call it?
Free undocumented labor is what I call it, Malcolm answered. Dracula returned his attention to Cammy.
There you are. Though that is more diplomatic than I would have put it.
Cammy tried to make sense of the situation. The government. The government? Men in black suits trying to keep supernaturals hidden? That didn't seem right. She had assumed that it was a bunch of people in hoods and robes, not city council members or the CIA or the president. Was that even possible? Everyone who got sworn in got told, "Hey, so there are vampires." That was secrecy on a level that she hadn't thought possible. Okay, so she knew people who thought the government was secretly poisoning people, but not hiding vampires or other monsters. What sort of resources would they have for that sort of thing, even to make that sort of thing even possible? She shook her head. It didn't seem possible.
Wait, so you're both government employees?
That was even more absurd.
Not him. He works for Order of Orpheus, an occult order founded a few hundred years ago. I happen to be a member of a religious... I happen to be a member of a religious order of knights. Very different order.
He showed her a heavy ring that he wore on one finger. It was worn almost as bald as an old tire, but she could see the impression like a dragon with a tree on a cross or something like that on its back.
The Order of the Dragon. Whence I take my name. The order has been repurposed since the 1500s when it officially ceased to exist. I no longer consist of crusaders fending off Muslim invasions and instead defends humanity against forces of darkness.
Crusaders.
A very prestigious crusader order.
Dracula clarified, sounding downright proud, even managing to glow with satisfaction. Yeah, you're so proud that you'll keep that name no matter what, huh?
That was my first name.
Your own people don't even call you that anymore. This earned Malcolm an ugly glower.
Thank you for coming all the way here. If you wouldn't mind, my youngest guest is worried that her roommate might be in danger. Would you keep an ear out for any word?
Malcolm tucked his hand under his armpits. But he nodded at Cammy. She pulled out her phone and showed him a picture.
Her name is Heather Blake. I'm not sure how long she's been missing. We work different schedules, so sometimes I see her I don't see her for days. And she told me about this rideshare service, Green for Life, and when I took them, they were a bunch of vampires.
Whoa. Hang on. A bunch of vampires were running a rideshare service. A vampire Uber? That can't be right.
It is a large group. There were 22 last night, but I have killed well over 60 so far. I've never seen anything like those numbers.
Over 60. And they're using a rideshare to find the victims? Oh, no. That can't be right. It makes no sense. They'd get caught. Traced.
It seems the drivers alerted others that he was bringing Cammy. We haven't learned more about that yet.
Malcolm frowned, chewing on his lip. Who'd you piss off? Malcolm asked Cammy.
What? No one.
I hate to tell you, Cammy, but your girl is probably definitely dead. Tatum, no. Tatum. Please. Doesn't figure that a bunch of vampires would want to pick you up unless there was something personal happening.
Well, I don't know any vampires.
She eyed Dracula.
Except him, I guess. I don't know why they wanted me.
Maybe your roommate told them about you, Malcolm suggested. Cammy glared at him.
Heather wouldn't do that. Why would she do that? How in the world could she even tell a bunch of vampires what to do?
Malcolm shrugged. Motive is everything. Trying to work out the math.
Well, you suck at math then,
she told him. Malcolm ignored her comment. Tell me more about these guys, he asked Dracula. They're one of those
Hollywood types, as you call them.
Describe them, Malcolm said.
They can't bear sunlight, they kill every time they feed, and a single bite turns a human.
Dracula said.
Crosses, crucifixes, and garlic do not trouble them. I think these were all trolls. They can be killed by staking or beheading. Do both. Some are wild cards.
Malcolm scratched his temple. That's pretty generic for the modern ones. Well, if I hear anything, I'll let you know. Though, now that you mention it, I've been picking up some chatter. But you know how it is with monsters. They don't like to talk to me. You've probably heard more than I have. So Malcolm could be one of the humans who hunted monsters then. Cammy hadn't been certain before whether he was another vampire.
I've heard another moot has been called, but I haven't yet heard of the location or the time.
Dracula told him. So there is something going down, Malcolm punctuated by pointing his down with his finger.
Perhaps a moot doesn't necessarily mean anything specific has arisen or that anything will be accomplished. Monsters are not so different from humans in that respect. But if I hear anything more than that, then I'll let you know first.
At this, Malcolm laid a finger across his lips and nodded. Much obliged, he said. Something about this conversation bothered her. Dracula had been trying to keep her in the loop, but now neither of them were bothered to include her. And it was possible that Malcolm's gesture had been some sort of secret sign that these hunters used.
What's a moot?
A meeting called by non-humans. It has become much harder to hold them for reasons that I assume are apparent.
Cammy eyed Malcolm. If moots were for non-humans, then why tell him?
Are you a vampire too?
This was driving her nuts. Malcolm's mouth cracked into a grin and he guffawed. Oh, wow. I'm not used to people this fresh, he said. No, I'm one of Oifus' frontliners, and I am what you would call a werewolf.
Werewolves are real?
Cammy said. Then she felt stupid for asking. Why wouldn't werewolves be real?
Hang on. What do you mean? What I would call a werewolf?
You've seen he isn't all capes and fangs and Hungarian accents, right? Malcolm asked, thumbing at Dracula. Same thing here. I'm old school, not one of the Hollywood werewolves.
Well, what are you like?
Think more berserker or bloodthirsty doggo and less moon-powered mutant furry. That didn't sound so terribly werewolf-like to Cammy, but then Dracula wasn't very vampire-like so far as she could tell either, so it didn't really surprise her.
So Hollywood pretty much got everything wrong?
She said. Sure, and now we're stuck with this garbage, Malcolm said, and to Dracula, what kind of vampire do you prefer?
The modern ones. They are much weaker and less capable than traditional ones.
Malcolm made a face, and Cammy wondered how tough Dracula must be if he thought that modern vampires were weak. Well, that's not so true for werewolves. The modern ones are way tougher than I am. He turned back to Cammy. I'll see what I can do about your friend. But you should seriously reconsider becoming part of all of this, for your own good.
Thanks.
Cammy crossed her arms. Dracula had started flipping through the folder. He closed it and held it out to Malcolm.
I don't deal with impulses. Get a priest or something.
We don't work with priests, said Malcolm.
And I can't fight it. Find someone else.
Malcolm sighed and took back the folder. Can't you broker some sort of talk for us? Like, this thing might run rampant.
That is not my concern. But since you've asked, I'll make a call.
Malcolm nodded, returned to his vehicle, and drove off.
He came all the way up here just for that?
Cammy asked, once the car had gone around the mansion.
I imagine he, like me, likes excuses now and again.
Dracula said. The excuse to do what? She wondered.
What's an impusa?
A kind of vampire.
No duh, she thought. She eyed the cooler.
What's in that?
It would seem Malcolm is hoping I can broker some sort of agreement between my religious order and his occult one. No doubt he will be rewarded if he should succeed.
You've got some weird friends. So your religious guys will work with this guy?
I do not think it prudent to delve into how the different groups interact with one another at this moment. Excuse me, I must put this away.
He returned to the mansion. Cammy followed behind. She wasn't about to be left alone outside with monsters that wanted to rape her. It seemed he didn't want to talk about the cooler, so she decided to wait just inside the doorway while he dealt with it. She wondered what was in it. She supposed the obvious answer was blood, but it seemed strange that he didn't want to be secretive, or that he'd want to be secretive about something that obvious. Maybe it was something worse. Since he didn't want to talk about it, she let him walk deeper into the mansion and stayed by the kitchen door, that she'd have to leave soon anyway. Hey. Once more, she jumped out of her skin. Malcolm stood just outside the doorway, grinning like an old friend.
What is wrong with you? You scared me to death.
Cammy told him.
Why do you guys sneak up around all the time?
Sorry I'm startling you, but I just remembered that I was supposed to get a gift, like some meat. Cammy looked over her shoulder, but Dracula hadn't returned.
Oh, all right. He's putting the cooler away that you brought.
Malcolm continued to grin at her, clasping his hands together. That seemed weird.
Oh, I wouldn't want to cause
any trouble. Would you just go and check in the kitchen? I'm sure there's something there.
some meat.
He nodded enthusiastically. And eggs.
There are eggs for sure. He said he had some pork.
Cammy said. Malcolm made no moves to enter the kitchen.
Are you not allowed in?
She asked, wondering why he wouldn't be. I wouldn't want to impose, but do you think that you could find me something? I'm sure that it wouldn't be a problem. Cammy moved to the kitchen. Then she hesitated. Most of the monsters that Dracula had told her about looked human and were invisible or naked, but this interaction seemed really odd. Malcolm hadn't returned with his car, for one, and his smile was different. It wasn't the smolder that he'd flashed at her the first time, nor the hesitant one that she'd seen after that. Was he asking her to steal food for him? Considering Dracula's apparent hatred for theft, could this be the reason that he wanted her to do it for him?
I'd feel more comfortable waiting for him to come back,
she said. Malcolm smiled harder and began to wring his hands. Nothing to worry about, he assured her. Just a little food. You won't get in any trouble. So the end of the chapter is not for a while, but that was the end of the page. So I'm going to leave it on this cliffhanger because it is quitting time. And that feels like a good place to leave it because what is happening? So now we get to make our summary. Is this showing on the thing? Oh, I gotta turn that on. Story so far. There we go. There we go. Yeah. I'm like, I can feel my lips not reading correctly anymore, too. So it's 11:15, which is usually when we stop anyway on the later nights. So that's where it's going to be. And after this, we should start hitting the plot. Because this is like the heaviest of the information chapters that I can recall. Agreed, Gabby. That's what I really noticed. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh boy, is this what we are in for? And then what redeemed it a lot for me while I kept going was the character interactions. I think Brian and Dracula get really fun together, and when you see Dracula and the feds are really fun together. And so this was a really rough chapter. I remember being like, oof. And then just having a good time after that I actually forgot about this chapter. The story so far should be Cammy looked down the well, then got sucked in by the well lady. Okay, so our name is Cammy. We got kicked out of our apartment. Roomie didn't pay rent. Roomie does drugs. Mom is a Karen. We say no because she's controlling. While going to meet with roomie, get in cab with weird pale freaks. Turns out well, it was a freak, I should say. Pale freak was a vampire taking us to be blood orgied. Mysterious man appeared and beheaded all of them. Put phone in pocket and stalk weird man into woods because we're kind of stupid and bored. Turns out weird man was a vampire named Dracula. Yes, the Dracula. The mysterious hot man? Okay, I will do that for you. Wait, do we want that as the weird hot man? A mysterious hot man? There you go. That's for you, monkey. We don't, no, of course we don't kink shame here. Everybody gets, to do their thing. That's just how we be. Thank you, Nightmare, and the Dracula. It is the Dracula. I appreciate you, Nightmare. Dracula invites us to stay at his house as his guest. We say yes. Oh, look, we get to the well ladies. Next morning, be shown around mansion. Yeah, Nightmare always being awesome. I cannot express. I think I was telling somebody in my family the other day. I was like, freaking Nightmare gave me a super chat, and I felt unworthy. Learn about rapists and murderers living on the grounds, especially bothered by rapists. Also, some hot women, nymphs, and well ladies, especially bothered by rapist. I should say rapist. Satyrs. If you talk satyrs. Oh my gosh. My spelling is shot right now. If you talk in parentheses, YouTube can't hear you say the words. Also, Gabby, have you seen The Hunt? It's a werewolf comic. It's an indie werewolf comic. And the well ladies, we know they all want to get down. Meet Dracula's, I should say met Dracula's buddy Malcolm, the werewolf, recruiting literally everyone to look for her. Also, there's Hollywood vampires overrunning Seattle. Probably also rapists, because that's so Hollywood. And BFF Brian the cop worried about Cammy, and I think it's Cammy with a Y. I've been looking at it all. I've only been looking at it all night, and I don't remember if it's an IE or a Y. Oh no, Gabby. And went looking for her everywhere.
Sorry, Brian. You got kinda lost in everything. Happening is Cammy's roomie Heather dead. You did make it for the last 10 seconds, Kat. We are just writing this up. Is it all showing? It is all showing. We good. Okay, do we have anything else we need to add? We did miss you, though, Kat. And hope you guys all have a great evening. Thank you for joining me tonight with the intro to Dracula's Guest. Make sure to follow. Check it out. Help the author out if you enjoy the reading. And until next time, I hate to leave now because Kat just got here. And this is like the family is just sort of kind of getting together. It feels wrong to disturb. But I hope you all have a good evening. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate every last one of you every week that you show up. Have a great weekend and don't die.